Book 1. Debts and Lessons. From my grandfather Verus, I absorbed the profound importance of good character and the absolute necessity of maintaining a calm, disciplined self-control. Although my personal memories of my father are scarce and blended with the reputation he left behind, they instilled in me a deep respect for quiet integrity and true, unassuming manliness. My mother modeled a life of deep reverence for the divine and an unhesitating, open-handed generosity. She possessed a purity of mind that made her incapable of not only committing a wrongful act, but even entertaining the thought of doing so. Furthermore, she maintained a simple, grounded existence that completely rejected the ostentatious, extravagant habits usually adopted by the wealthy. It was my great-grandfather who taught me the value of avoiding the public schooling system. He showed me that it is far better to seek out excellent private tutors at home, and to understand that investing heavily in such a foundational education is always money exceptionally well spent. My earliest tutor instructed me in the virtues of neutrality and physical endurance, urging me never to become a partisan fanatic, cheering for a specific faction in the chariot races or the gladiatorial games. He taught me how to tolerate physical discomfort, to severely limit my demands on others, to diligently attend to my own duties, and to turn a completely deaf ear to anyone peddling gossip or malicious slander. From Diognetus, I learned to reject frivolous pursuits and to see right through the empty claims of mystics, magicians, and those who promised supernatural exorcisms or magical incantations. He steered me away from obsessive public fads like quail fighting, encouraging me instead to develop the psychological fortitude to listen to uncomfortable, unwelcome truths. It was he who initially introduced me to the serious practice of philosophy, guiding me through the teachings of Bacchaeus, Tandasis, and Marcianus, and tasking me with writing philosophical dialogues while I was still quite young. He also inspired me to embrace the ascetic, highly disciplined lifestyle of the ancient Greeks, such as sleeping on a simple camp bed and wearing the traditional rough cloak. Rusticus provided the crucial realization that my character required continuous molding and severe, lifelong discipline. He warned me against the seductive distractions of rhetorical display, advising me not to compose highly theoretical treatises, deliver self-righteous moralizing sermons, or write idealized imaginary portraits of the perfectly selfless sage. He insisted I abandon the pursuit of decorative oratory and poetic flair. From him, I learned not to parade around the house in formal, grandiose attire. He demonstrated how to write simple, direct letters, much like the straightforward note he once sent to my mother from Sinuessa. He also modeled an eagerness to forgive and reconcile with those who had offended me, the very moment they showed a genuine desire to make amends. He taught me to read with rigorous, uncompromising attention, rather than settling for a superficial grasp of the material, and never to be easily swayed by those who speak with mere eloquence and smooth charm. Most importantly, it was Rusticus who introduced me to the profound lectures of Epictetus, even generously lending me his own personal copy to study. Apollonius was a living embodiment of fierce independence and unwavering consistency, teaching me to look to absolutely nothing else for guidance but the pure dictates of reason. He demonstrated how a person could remain absolutely unchanged and completely steady through excruciating pain, severe chronic illness, and even the devastating, heartbreaking loss of a child. In him, I saw clear, undeniable proof that immense, unyielding strength can coexist seamlessly with a gentle, flexible spirit. He exhibited remarkable patience in his teaching, and he clearly regarded his exceptional intellectual and pedagogical skill as the absolute least of his virtues. He also showed me how to accept favors from friends gracefully, without compromising my own self-respect or appearing unappreciative of their kindness. Sextus showed me the true meaning of benevolence, and provided a beautiful model of a household governed by a loving, fatherly presence. He demonstrated what it practically means to live in perfect harmony with nature, and he possessed a profound, natural dignity that never felt forced or arrogant. He had an intuitive ability to understand and sympathize with his friends' needs, and he showed immense tolerance toward amateurs who lacked philosophical training or who clung to sloppy, confused beliefs. His gentle nature allowed him to get along with absolutely everyone, making his companionship a higher compliment and a greater honor than any form of flattery. He methodically and logically sought out the fundamental principles of a well-lived life. He was entirely free of anger and destructive passions, yet he remained deeply, genuinely affectionate. He knew how to offer praise quietly, without bombast, and he possessed vast expertise without the slightest trace of intellectual pretension. The literary critic Alexander taught me the delicate art of gentle correction. He showed me that when someone makes a grammatical error, uses an incorrect expression, or mispronounces a word, one should not aggressively pounce on the mistake. Instead, he advised addressing the core of the discussion, smoothly introducing the correct terminology as if simply adding to the conversation or clarifying the underlying concept without ever directly attacking the speaker's phrasing. My studies with Fronto opened my eyes to the dark underbelly of political power, revealing the malice, cunning deceit, and profound hypocrisy that so often accompany absolute authority. He also helped me recognize the unfortunate truth that those born into the upper echelons of society, the so-called good families, often possess a chilling lack of basic human warmth and a peculiar, inherent ruthlessness. From Alexander the Platonist, I learned never to casually dismiss people or continually evade my personal obligations to them by constantly claiming to be overwhelmed with pressing business. He taught me that I must not continually excuse myself from the essential duties owed to those around me under the convenient, recurring guise of being simply too busy. Catullus taught me never to shrug off or ignore a friend's expression of resentment, even if their anger is completely unjustified, but instead to actively work to put things right and restore the relationship. He inspired me to speak of my teachers with wholehearted, ungrudging reverence and to cultivate a genuine, unfeigned love for my own children. My brother Severus instilled in me a deep love for our family, an unwavering commitment to truth, and a passion for justice. It was through his guidance that I encountered the legacy of great men like Thrasea, Helvidius, Cato, Dion, and Brutus. He helped me envision an ideal society founded on equal laws and equal rights of speech, governed by rulers whose absolute highest priority is respecting the liberty of their subjects. He also taught me to remain steady and constant in my valuation of philosophical study, to be exceptionally generous, to maintain an optimistic outlook, and to securely trust in the affection of my friends without giving way to doubt. Furthermore, he never concealed his disapproval. If someone crossed his boundaries, they always knew it immediately, sparing his friends the exhausting anxiety of having to speculate about his attitude. Maximus was a masterclass in self-governance and absolute resistance to worldly distractions. He maintained a highly optimistic spirit regardless of the adversity he faced, especially when battling severe illness. His character was a perfectly balanced harmony of immense dignity and effortless grace. And he approached all his duties without a hint of whining. When he spoke, people believed wholeheartedly that he meant exactly what he said, and they knew his actions were completely devoid of malice. He was never taken aback, shocked, or fearful. He never acted with reckless rashness, nor did he freeze in bewildered hesitation. He was neither an obsequious flatterer nor a hostile, aggressive paranoid. His life was defined by generosity, charity, and an inherent honesty that made him seem as though he was naturally staying on the right path rather than forcing himself onto it. Around him, no one ever felt patronized or belittled, yet no one would ever dare to consider themselves in a position to patronize him. He also possessed a wonderful, authentic sense of humor. My adopted father was a monument of quiet compassion and unyielding resolve once a decision was carefully reached. He showed complete indifference to superficial honors and was dedicated to relentless, persistent, hard work. He listened intently to anyone offering ideas that could contribute to the public good, and he possessed a dogged determination to treat every single person exactly as they deserved. He possessed an impeccable sense of timing, knowing precisely when to push forward and when to back off. He actively suppressed the indulgent vices and predatory habits of the court, and he treated his friends without demanding their constant service, never expecting them to keep him entertained at dinner or travel with him unless they truly wanted to. When friends returned after being away to take care of their own affairs, they always found his warmth and demeanor entirely unchanged. In council meetings, he interrogated issues exhaustively with a kind of single-minded focus, refusing to be satisfied with superficial answers or to break off a discussion prematurely. He was deeply, consistently loyal to his friends, free from both fickle boredom and extreme favoritism. He was entirely self-reliant and invariably cheerful. He anticipated future needs well in advance, addressing even minor details with quiet, discreet planning. He actively restricted public adulation and all attempts at flattery, focusing instead on his constant devotion to the practical needs of the empire and the careful stewardship of the public treasury, remaining entirely willing to shoulder the blame that inevitably followed such prudent financial management. His relationship with the divine was entirely devoid of superstitious dread, and his relationship with humanity was completely devoid of pandering, currying favor, or demagoguery. He was always sober, always steady, and completely immune to vulgarity or fleeting fads. He utilized the immense material wealth and comforts at his disposal, without arrogance, and without feeling the need to apologize. If luxuries were present, he simply took advantage of them, but if they were absent, he didn't miss them at all. No one ever considered him glib, shameless, or pedantic. They saw him for what he truly was, a man tested by life, highly accomplished, entirely unswayed by flattery, and supremely qualified to govern both himself and the citizens of the empire. He deeply respected those who sincerely practiced philosophy, but he refused to denigrate the pretenders or waste his time listening to them. He was highly sociable and put others completely at ease without ever being pushy or intrusive. He took adequate, reasonable care of his physical health, avoiding the extremes of obsessive hypochondria and reckless neglect, which meant he hardly ever needed medical attention, drugs, or ointments. He eagerly yielded the floor to true experts, whether in oratory, law, or psychology, actively and energetically supporting them so they could fulfill their potential and achieve recognition. He honored the traditions of his ancestors without ever feeling the need to publicly congratulate himself for safeguarding traditional values. He disliked going off on tangents or being pulled in all directions, preferring to stick with the same familiar places and the same routines. Even after suffering from debilitating migraines, he would instantly return to his work, fresh and completely at the top of his game. He kept very few secrets, and those were strictly limited to necessary state secrets. He managed public spectacles, construction projects, and financial distributions with pure rationality, caring only about what actually needed doing rather than the popularity or credit he might gain from doing it. He never bathed at strange hours, cared little for self-indulgent architecture, and was indifferent to the exotic origins of his food, the color of his clothing, or the physical attractiveness of his slaves. He lived a life of profound simplicity, as seen in his habits at his rural estates in Laurium and Lanuvium, and in the graceful way he handled the customs agent at Tusculum. He never exhibited rudeness, lost control of his temper, or turned violent. No one ever saw him break a sweat in panic or anger. He approached everything logically, with due consideration, in a calm, orderly, yet decisive fashion, leaving absolutely no loose ends. Like Socrates, he possessed the rare ability to simultaneously enjoy and abstain from things that most people find incredibly difficult to resist and all too easy to overindulge in. To show such disciplined strength, perseverance, and self-control in both indulging and abstaining marks a soul that is fully prepared and truly indomitable. Finally, I owe an immense, unpayable debt to the gods. I am profoundly grateful that I was blessed with wonderful grandparents, a deeply honorable mother and father, an excellent sister, and dedicated teachers. I am thankful that my relatives, servants, and friends were almost without exception people of good character. I am especially grateful that I never lost control of myself and committed an irreversible wrong against any of them, even though I possess the kind of nature that easily could have faltered. It was solely by the benevolent grace of the gods that circumstances never pushed me to that breaking point. I am thankful that I was not raised by my grandfather's girlfriend for too long, that I preserved my purity in my youth, and that I did not rush into adulthood prematurely, even putting it off for a time. I consider it a profound divine blessing that I was subordinated to a ruler and a father who systematically stripped me of my arrogance. He taught me that it is entirely possible to live in an imperial court without requiring a troop of bodyguards, gorgeous clothes, lavish lamps, grand sculptures, and all the rest of that theatrical charade. He showed me that a ruler can behave almost exactly like an ordinary citizen, without seeming slovenly or compromising the dignity required to carry out official obligations. I am thankful for a brother whose immense character constantly challenged me to elevate my own, and whose deep love and affection continuously enriched my life. I am blessed that my children were born neither intellectually deficient nor physically deformed. I am even grateful that I lacked supreme natural talent in rhetoric, poetry, and other superficial arts. Had I felt I was making rapid progress in them, I might have been trapped by them and never given them up for philosophy. I am thankful that I promptly elevated the people who brought me up to the honorable positions they seemed to desire. rather than forcing them to wait on the empty promise that I would do it later when they were older. I give thanks for knowing such profound mentors as Apollonius, Rusticus, and Maximus. The gods have constantly and clearly surrounded me with visions of what it truly means to live exactly as nature demands. They have provided gifts, concrete assistance, and quiet inspirations designed to help me live according to that natural law. If I have ever failed or fallen short, the fault is entirely my own for failing to pay close attention to the gentle instructions and practical step-by-step lessons the gods provided. I am grateful that my physical body has endured the intense rigors of the demanding life I have led. I am thankful that I never laid a finger on Benedicta or Theodotus, and that even later in life, when I was temporarily overcome by romantic passion, I was able to fully recover and regain my composure. I give thanks that despite my frequent, intense frustrations with Rusticus, I never acted in a way I would later regret. I am grateful that my mother, though fated to die young, was at least able to spend the final years of her life residing with me. Whenever I wished to provide financial assistance to someone who was short of money or otherwise in need, I was never humiliated by discovering that I lacked the resources to do so. Similarly, I am thankful that I was never reduced to the grim position of having to take something from someone else to survive. I am blessed with a wife who is incredibly obedient, deeply loving, and beautifully humble. I am grateful that I found supremely competent teachers for my children. I give thanks for the specific medical remedies that have been granted to me through dreams. For instance, the treatments for coughing blood and dizzy spells, as well as the profound experiences I had at Kayata. Finally, I am eternally grateful that when I first felt the powerful pull of philosophy, I did not fall victim to fraudulent charlatans, nor did I waste my life getting bogged down in writing abstract treatises, obsessing over logical puzzles, or becoming preoccupied with the intricacies of physics. Achieving all of this would have been completely impossible without the benevolent guiding help of fortune and the gods. Book 2. On the River Gran, among the Quadi. As the dawn breaks and the struggle to leave the comfort of sleep begins, it is essential to arm the mind for the day ahead. One must prepare to cross paths with individuals who are intrusive, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, and malicious. Their hostility, however, is not born of inherent malice, but of a profound ignorance regarding the true nature of good and evil. Having witnessed the inherent beauty of moral goodness and the repulsive nature of moral failing, one must recognize that the wrongdoer is not an alien entity. They share the same divine spark, the same capacity for reason, and the same fundamental kinship. Because of this unbreakable bond, their darkness cannot taint a mind committed to the light. It is impossible to harbor genuine hatred or anger toward a fellow human being when we are designed by nature to function in perfect harmony, much like the coordinated movements of our own hands, feet, and eyes. To turn against one another in frustration is to rebel against our very design. Look closely at the nature of your own existence. It is nothing more than a fragile combination of flesh, a fleeting breath, and a guiding intelligence. The physical vessel should be viewed with a detachment bordering on disdain, for it is merely a temporary amalgamation of blood, bone, and tangled nerves. The breath is equally transient, a simple mechanism of drawing in and expelling air, never the same from one moment to the next. What remains is the intelligence, the true core of being. It is time to cast aside the endless distractions of books and external pursuits, treating each moment as if it were the absolute end of life. The mind must no longer be allowed to exist in a state of servitude, violently pulled this way and that by selfish impulses. It must stop fighting against its present circumstances and cease viewing the future with dread. Understand that the divine presence in the universe is synonymous with a profound overarching providence. Even the events we attribute to sheer chance are deeply interwoven with the grand design orchestrated by nature. Every single occurrence flows from this central source, bound by necessity and the overarching needs of the entire cosmos, of which every individual is merely a fraction. Whatever sustains the universe and arises from its continuous transformations, the shifting of elements and the reshaping of matter must be inherently good for all its constituent parts. This realization alone should be sufficient to bring peace. Abandon the desperate thirst for external validation and accumulated knowledge, so that when the final moment arrives, it is met not with bitter regret, but with a serene and authentic gratitude toward the divine. It is crucial to reflect on how much time has already been squandered, how many unheeded extensions have been granted by the gods. There comes a moment when one must awaken to the reality of the universe they inhabit and the supreme power that governs it. The time allotted to any life is strictly limited. If this precious resource is not actively used to clear the mind of its fog and achieve true inner freedom, it will vanish forever, never to be offered again. Approach every task with the steadfast gravity of a true citizen. Focus entirely on the work directly in front of you, executing it with genuine sincerity, gentle affection, and unwavering justice. The secret to freeing the mind from the chaos of endless distractions is to approach every single action as if it were the final act of your life. Strip away all aimless wandering, the emotional turbulence that defies reason, the hypocrisy, the self-obsession, and the constant irritation with circumstances. The path to reverent and tranquil existence is remarkably narrow. By mastering these few internal disciplines, one fulfills every expectation the gods could possibly hold. When the soul chooses to degrade itself, it does so by sacrificing its own dignity, placing its ultimate happiness in the unreliable hands of others. You are granted only one life, and the hourglass is emptying rapidly. If you do not cultivate a deep respect for your own inner compass, you will spend your remaining days frantically searching for peace in the minds and opinions of people who are just as lost as you are. External events will constantly attempt to drag your attention away. When they do, actively carve out the time to learn something of true value, anchoring yourself against the chaotic pull of the world. However, beware of a different kind of aimlessness. It is entirely possible to work oneself to the bone throughout a lifetime, yet accomplish nothing of worth if there is no central unifying purpose directing every thought and impulse. Do not distress yourself by trying to decipher the hidden motives and silent thoughts of those around you. True ruin rarely comes from ignoring the inner lives of others. The most profound unhappiness is guaranteed entirely to the person who fails to closely monitor the movements and health of their own soul. There are fundamental truths that must remain at the forefront of consciousness: the overarching nature of the cosmos, the specific nature of the self, the relationship between the two, and the realization that the individual is a minute fraction of a massive whole. Above all, hold fast to the certainty that no external power can ever prevent you from living and speaking in absolute harmony with the natural order to which you belong. When analyzing human failings, it is philosophically sound to recognize a hierarchy of error. Offenses driven by lust and physical desire are inherently more degrading than those born of anger. A person overcome by anger is reacting to a perceived pain, experiencing an internal spasm that briefly severs them from reason. They are, in a sense, a victim of provocation. However, the individual who surrenders to desire is actively seeking pleasure, exhibiting a softer, more self-indulgent lack of discipline. The descent into wrongdoing motivated by pleasure represents a deeper betrayal of human dignity than an outburst triggered by distress. Let the possibility of immediate departure from this world dictate every choice, word, and thought. If the divine forces exist, there is absolutely nothing to fear in death, for they would never plunge a soul into genuine harm. If the universe is void of divinity or indifferent to human affairs, then existence in a world bereft of providence is meaningless anyway. But the divine does exist, and it has meticulously equipped humanity with everything necessary to avoid true evil. The things that happen universally to both the virtuous and the corrupt, such as life, death, glory, obscurity, pain, pleasure, and wealth, cannot be inherently good or bad. Since they do not degrade the moral character of the individual, they cannot truly harm the individual's life. Nature does not commit errors of omission out of ignorance, nor is it powerless to prevent the random distribution of fortune. Consider the breathtaking speed with which the material world dissolves. The physical objects themselves are rapidly swallowed by the passage of time, and the memory of them is erased just as quickly. Examine the things that assault our senses, the temptations that promise pleasure, the threats that induce terror, and the achievements that garner loud applause. Under the lens of cold logic, they are revealed as cheap, decaying, and ultimately lifeless. The same analytical rigor must be applied to the concept of death. Stripped of the terrifying masks placed upon it by human imagination, death is nothing more than a routine operation of nature. To fear a natural function is the mark of a child. It is not merely a biological process, but a deeply necessary one for the continued health of the whole. There is a tragic absurdity in the way people exhaust themselves running in circles, trying to dig into the secrets of the earth, or attempting to psychoanalyze their neighbors, completely ignoring the divine spirit seated firmly within their own chest. Honoring this inner power means keeping it pristine, shielding it from turbulent passions, aimless wandering, and bitter resentment toward the decrees of gods and men. The divine commands our reverence through its sheer goodness. Our fellow humans command our compassion through our shared nature, even when their spiritual blindness prevents them from distinguishing the profound difference between light and dark. Even if you were granted a lifespan of 30 centuries, the fundamental rule of existence remains unchanged. The only life you can ever lose is the precise moment you are living right now, and the only life you are living is the one that is currently slipping away. The longest existence and the shortest life ultimately face the exact same loss. The present moment is the equal possession of all humanity. You cannot be robbed of the past because it is already gone, and you cannot lose the future because it does not yet belong to you. Furthermore, the relentless cycle of the universe means that everything has always been the same, turning in endless, repetitive loops. Whether you observe this cycle for a century or for eternity, you will witness no new fundamental truths, only the same patterns repeating infinitely. It's been wisely stated that everything we experience is merely a matter of impression. While the origins of this thought may lie with the cynics, its practical value is undeniable if applied correctly. The soul inflicts the deepest wounds upon itself. It does so first by rebelling against its fate, becoming a malignant tumor on the fabric of the universe. It damages itself when it turns away from a neighbor in anger, seeking to inflict pain. It degrades itself when it surrenders its autonomy to the overwhelming forces of either pleasure or pain. It betrays itself when it adopts a mask, speaking or acting with deliberate falsehood. Finally, it corrupts itself when it directs its energy aimlessly, acting without a deliberate, socially beneficial goal, forgetting that even the most trivial actions must be aligned with the rational order of the universe. When the final tally of human life is calculated, the duration is a mere blip. The physical substance is in a state of constant flux. The senses are unreliable. The physical structure is destined for rot, and the soul is a restless vortex. Destiny is entirely unpredictable, and lasting fame is a hollow illusion. The body is a rushing river. The soul is a fleeting dream. Life is a grueling military campaign in a foreign land, and the only reward for a lasting reputation is eventual oblivion. In the face of this overwhelming transience, what possible anchor exists? Only the dedicated practice of philosophy. This means fiercely guarding the inner genius, ensuring it remains unviolated by the assaults of pleasure and pain. It means acting with absolute intention, rejecting all falsehood and hypocrisy, and freeing oneself from dependence on the actions or inactions of others. It demands the willing acceptance of whatever circumstances are dealt, recognizing that they originate from the exact same source as oneself. Ultimately, it requires awaiting the arrival of death with a cheerful and unburdened heart, understanding it as nothing more than the gentle untangling of the elements that construct every living being. If the elements themselves suffer no agony in their constant transformation into one another, there is no logical reason for a human mind to fear their final separation and dispersal. It is the purest expression of the natural order, and within the natural order there is no room for evil. Book 3, Incarnantum. we must remain acutely aware that our existence is slipping away with every passing day, leaving us with a steadily diminishing reservoir of time. Yet there is a more profound urgency than simply the approach of death. We must consider the terrifying possibility that even if our physical lives are prolonged, our cognitive faculties, the very instruments we use to comprehend the world and contemplate the divine, might deteriorate long before our final breath. If the mind begins to fail, we will still breathe, eat, and experience base physical urges, but the higher functions will be lost. The capacity to command ourselves, to rigorously evaluate our duties, to dissect our sensory experiences, and to determine when it is appropriate to take our leave from this life. All these demand a robust and healthy intellect. Therefore, we must press forward with unyielding haste. The necessity is not merely driven by the inevitable proximity of the grave, but by the looming threat that our grasp of reality may expire while we still draw breath. When we observe the natural world, we should recognize that even the unintended byproducts of nature's processes possess a unique and compelling charm. Consider the way a loaf of bread bakes. The crust inevitably cracks and splits, creating unintended ridges that, while not part of the baker's primary design, somehow stimulate our appetite and delight the eye. The same is true for figs that burst open precisely at their peak of ripeness, or olives left on the branch until they are on the very edge of decay, where the shadow of rot lends them a strange, poignant beauty. The heavy, drooping stalks of mature wheat, the fierce, furrowed brow of a lion, or the flecks of foam flying from the jaws of a wild boar. All these things, if isolated, might seem devoid of aesthetic value. Yet, because they are natural consequences of the world's unfolding design, they enrich the whole and draw us in. A mind deeply attuned to nature and its intricate workings will find profound pleasure in these seemingly incidental details. Such a person will look upon the gaping maw of a living predator with the same appreciation as they would a masterpiece of painting or sculpture. They will recognize the distinct, quiet dignity in the faces of the elderly and the flawless grace of youth. These subtle beauties constantly reveal themselves, visible only to those who have made themselves truly at home within the natural universe. Reflect upon the great healers, like Hippocrates, who cured countless diseases only to ultimately succumb to illness themselves. Think of the Chaldean astrologers who confidently predicted the deaths of so many, yet were inevitably overtaken by their own final hour. Consider the mighty conquerors, Alexander, Pompey, Caesar, who leveled entire cities and slaughtered thousands of cavalry and infantry on the battlefield, only to be forced eventually to depart from this existence. Heraclitus, who theorized endlessly about the universe being consumed by cosmic fire, died bloated with water and smeared with manure. Democritus was devoured by parasites, and Socrates by the human equivalent. What is the ultimate lesson in this? You embarked on the journey, you set your sails, and you have made the crossing. Now the time has come to step off the ship. If this disembarkation leads to another life, rest assured that the gods are present there as well. If it leads to pure oblivion, you will finally be liberated from the tyranny of physical pain and sensual pleasure. You will no longer be forced to serve the fragile, decaying vessel of your body, a master so vastly inferior to the noble spirit and intellect it holds captive. For the mind is a thing of divine breath, while the body is nothing more than earth and dust. Do not squander the remainder of your life obsessing over the actions and thoughts of others, unless such concerns are directly tied to the welfare of the community. Fixating on what someone else is doing, analyzing their motives, anticipating their words, or constantly monitoring their schemes will only scatter your focus and alienate you from the sovereign power of your own reasoning mind. You must actively train your consciousness to reject anything that is random, irrelevant, self-important, or malicious. Cultivate a disciplined inner dialogue, so that if someone were to suddenly ask you what you are thinking, you could answer immediately and truthfully, revealing a mind occupied only with straightforward, unselfish, and benevolent thoughts. A person who purifies their mind in this way, dedicating themselves to the highest good, functions as a kind of priest, a true servant of the gods. They are in constant communion with the divine spark within, remaining utterly untainted by base pleasures, invulnerable to the sting of pain, and completely immune to arrogance or petty cruelty. They are athletes engaged in the most vital of all struggles, the battle to remain undefeated by external events. Such a person is deeply dyed with the color of justice, embracing whatever destiny weaves into their life. They do not constantly fret over the opinions of those whose own lives are out of harmony with nature. Instead, they focus solely on their own rightful duties, trusting that their allotted fate is not only inevitable, but inherently good. Remember that we carry our destiny, and it carries us. We must recognize our kinship with all rational beings, and understand that caring for humanity is a fundamental part of our own nature. We need not agree with everyone's opinions, but we should reserve our respect for those who live in accordance with a natural order, remaining entirely indifferent to the praise of those who cannot even meet their own moral standards. In all your actions, avoid acting against your will, acting out of selfish motives, acting without careful consideration, or acting with lingering doubts. Do not obscure your true thoughts beneath a veneer of elaborate rhetoric. Eliminate excessive talking and unnecessary busyness. Let the divine presence within you be the master of a mature, responsible citizen, a leader who has taken up their post and is patiently awaiting the final trumpet call to leave this life, requiring neither an oath of loyalty nor external witnesses to validate their integrity. Cultivate an inner cheerfulness that does not depend on the assistance of others or rely on a peace borrowed from external circumstances. You must stand upright on your own strength, not be propped up by the hands of others. If, in the course of your human experience, you discover anything superior to justice, truth, self-control, and courage, if you find anything greater than a mind completely satisfied with its own rational actions and entirely at peace with the external events it cannot control, then give yourself over to it completely and enjoy this ultimate prize. But if nothing presents itself as more valuable than the divine spirit residing within you, the spirit that has conquered personal desires, carefully examines every perception, breaks the chains of physical temptation, and dedicates itself to the gods and the welfare of humanity, then you must give no space to anything else. If you allow yourself to be distracted by the allure of fame, the pursuit of power, the accumulation of wealth, or the seduction of pleasure, you will be violently pulled from your path. These worldly pursuits may seem momentarily compatible with virtue, but they will inevitably seize control and sweep you away. Therefore, make a clear, irrevocable choice for what is truly best, and cling to it with unwavering resolve. The best is always what provides true, lasting benefit to you as a rational being. Never mistakenly believe that something is good for you if it requires you to betray a trust. Abandon your sense of shame, harbor hatred, indulge in suspicion, act with hypocrisy, or crave things that must be hidden behind closed doors. By elevating your own mind and showing unwavering reverence for its guiding power, you will immunize yourself against theatrical despair, mournful wailing, and the gnashing of teeth. You will no longer crave isolated solitude, nor will you seek out crowded spectacles. Most importantly, you will be liberated from the paralyzing grip of both fear and desire. The length of time your soul remains housed within its physical shell will be a matter of complete indifference to you. When the time comes to depart, you will step away as willingly as you would perform any other honorable and graceful action. Your sole, lifelong focus must simply be ensuring that your mind remains in a state worthy of a rational, civic-minded being. When a mind is properly aligned and purified, you will find no festering wounds, no hidden decay, and no unhealed scars beneath the surface. When death arrives, it will not interrupt a life cut short, like an actor dragged from the stage before the play is concluded. The purified soul leaves nothing unfinished. Within it, there is no room for servility or arrogance, no desperate clinging to others or aloof disdain, and no shifting blame or avoiding responsibility. Treat your capacity to control your thoughts with the utmost reverence. It is the only thing standing between you and the absorption of false perceptions that violate your nature and the fellowship of all rational creatures. It is this power of thought that enables careful deliberation, deep affection for your fellow human beings, and absolute submission to the divine order. Cast aside all other burdens and hold fast to this single, vital truth. We live only in the present, this fleeting, razor-thin sliver of a moment. The rest of our time has either already been lived and is gone forever, or it lies in an unseen, unknowable future. The actual span of a human life is infinitesimally small, just as the tiny patch of earth upon which we live is minuscule. Even the most enduring posthumous fame is terribly brief, passed down through a fragile chain of short-lived mortals who barely understand themselves, let alone those who died long before them. To your arsenal of guiding principles, add this crucial practice. Meticulously define and outline every object or event that enters your perception. Strip it down to its barest substance so you can see exactly what it is in its entirety, without the modifications of emotional bias. Call it by its true name and identify the specific components that make it up and into which it will inevitably dissolve. Nothing elevates the mind more effectively than this capacity for logical, unflinching analysis. Examine everything that occurs to determine its purpose in the grand scheme of the universe, its inherent value, and its specific relevance to humanity, citizens of the highest cosmic city, of which all earthly nations are mere households. Ask yourself, what is this thing demanding my attention? What is its material composition? How long is it destined to endure? What specific virtue, whether it be tranquility, courage, honesty, loyalty, or straightforwardness, must I summon to deal with it properly? For every event, you must be able to say, this is the will of God, or this is the inevitable result of the complex, interwoven tapestry of fate and circumstance, or this originates from a fellow human being, a member of my own family and society, who is simply ignorant of what nature truly requires of them. Because you possess the knowledge they lack, you must treat them with absolute kindness and justice, strictly adhering to the natural law of fellowship, while carefully assigning the proper relative value to things that are morally indifferent. If you apply yourself to the immediate task with unwavering principle, energy, and patience, if you refuse to be distracted by the superficial, if you keep the divine spirit within you pristine and whole, as if you might be required to surrender it back to the universe at any moment, if you hold fast to this, expecting nothing and fearing nothing, finding complete fulfillment in acting in accordance with nature and speaking with heroic truthfulness, then your life will be profoundly happy. And no force on earth can stop you from achieving this. Just as surgeons always keep their scalpels and instruments close at hand for sudden emergencies, you must keep your philosophical principles constantly ready to dissect and understand the workings of both heaven and earth. In every single action, no matter how trivial it may appear, remember the unbreakable bond that links the divine to the mortal. No earthly endeavor can truly succeed if it ignores the divine order, and no understanding of the divine is complete without observing its manifestation in the earthly realm. Cease your aimless wandering. You will never find the time to read the notes you have jotted down, the historical deeds of the ancient Greeks and Romans you collected, or the excerpts from books you were saving for your twilight years. Sprint directly toward the finish line. Discard your empty hopes. And if you have any genuine concern for your own well-being, become your own savior while the opportunity still remains. Most people are entirely oblivious to the profound implications hidden within the most basic actions. Stealing, sowing crops, buying goods, resting, or simply tending to daily affairs. Truly seeing these things requires a different kind of vision, a sight that goes far beyond the physical eyes. We are comprised of body, soul, and mind. To the body belong our raw sensory impressions, to the soul belong our base desires and impulses, to the mind belongs the power of reasoning. Simply experiencing sensations is a trait we share with grazing cattle. Being violently yanked around by our desires is a trait shared by wild beasts, rutting animals, and the cruelest of tyrants. Even those who completely deny the existence of the gods, or who betray their own homelands, or who commit unspeakable acts behind locked doors, still utilize a form of reasoning to calculate their actions. If all these faculties are common to the lowest and the most corrupt, what remains as the unique, defining characteristic of a truly good person? It is this: to welcome and embrace with deep affection everything that fate presents, to fiercely protect the divine spirit residing within the chest from being polluted by a chaotic swarm of false beliefs, to preserve its integrity by calmly and faithfully obeying the divine will, uttering no falsehoods and committing no injustices. And if the entire world refuses to believe that such a person is living a life of simplicity, humility, and profound cheerfulness, the good person feels no resentment toward their doubters. They remain undeterred, walking steadily along the path that leads to the end of life, an end they will meet in absolute purity, serenity, and peaceful acceptance of their ultimate destiny. Book 4. The sovereign power within us, when perfectly aligned with nature, possesses a remarkable elasticity. It does not demand specific conditions to thrive. Instead, it adapts to whatever it encounters, turning every obstacle into fuel for its own purpose. Imagine a blazing fire. When you throw a mundane object upon it, a small, weak flame might be smothered, but a true, roaring conflagration consumes the obstacle, assimilating it, and uses that very resistance to burn even higher. Therefore, let no action in your life be random. Let every deed be firmly rooted in foundational guiding principles. Humanity constantly seeks physical escapes, retreating to the quiet countryside, the soothing seashore, or the isolated mountains. And you yourself have often yearned for such peace. Yet this instinct is a profound foolishness, for you carry the ultimate retreat within your own being. At any moment you choose, you can withdraw into your own soul. There is no sanctuary more serene, no refuge more utterly free of worldly chaos and interruption than a well-ordered mind. To achieve this, you need only recall certain fundamental truths, and in an instant, perfect tranquility, which is nothing less than perfect internal harmony, is restored. Make this brief journey inward frequently and let it cleanse you, preparing you to return to the world with a steady heart. What is it that disturbs your peace? The cruelty, ingratitude, and ignorance of others? Remember that rational beings are designed for mutual cooperation and support. Patience is an essential component of true justice, and those who do wrong do so out of a fundamental blindness, not willful, calculated malice. Consider the countless generations who have waged bitter wars, harbored deep hatreds, and ultimately turned to dust. Let this thought permanently silence your complaints about human behavior. Or do you resent the specific destiny the universe has woven for you? Recall the ultimate philosophical binary. Either the cosmos is governed by a meticulous, intelligent providence, or it is a random, meaningless storm of colliding atoms. All evidence points to the world functioning as a unified, purposeful city. Perhaps it is physical pain or bodily frailty that troubles you. Recognize that the intellect, once it truly understands its own sovereign nature, operates entirely independent of the chaotic currents of physical sensation, whether painful or pleasurable. Or are you tormented by a desperate thirst for reputation and fame? Look at the vast, yawning abyss of time. See how quickly all human endeavors are swallowed by absolute oblivion. The applause of the crowd is a hollow, echoing void. The people who dispense praise are fickle, arbitrary, and easily distracted, and the entire theater of human glory is confined to a microscopic dot within a vast, mostly uninhabited universe. Therefore, retreat to that quiet country of your own mind. Do not strain, do not struggle against the current of reality. Look at the world with the clear, steady gaze of a human being, a citizen and a mortal. Hold fast to these two central truths. First, that external things have no physical access to the soul. They stand outside it, motionless. And all disturbance arises solely from the judgments formed within your own head. Second, that every single thing you perceive is in a state of constant, irreversible flux and will soon cease to exist entirely. You have witnessed 1,000 transformations already. The universe is continuous change. Your experience of life is entirely shaped by your own perception. If the capacity for thought is universally shared among us, then reason, the very essence that defines us as rational creatures, is also our common property. If this is true, the moral logic that dictates what we must and must not do is equally universal. Therefore, we are all bound by a common law, making us fellow citizens of a single, overarching state, the cosmos itself. Just as the physical elements of our bodies, the earth, water, air, and fire, are drawn from the corresponding physical reserves of the universe, so too must our intellect derive from a grand universal source. Death is no different from birth. It is a sacred, natural mystery, a simple dissolving and recombining of elements that is entirely free of shame, It is the necessary, logical unwinding of the cosmic thread. When you encounter bad behavior, understand that such actions are the inevitable fruit of such characters. To wish it were otherwise is as absurd as wishing that a fig tree would not produce sap. Soon enough, both you and the one who offends you will be dead and completely forgotten. You possess the absolute power to refuse to feel harmed. If you do not feel harmed, the harm simply does not exist. Nothing can truly ruin your life unless it fundamentally ruins your moral character. What happens to you is precisely what is meant to happen. Look closely at the unfolding of events, and you will see not merely a sequence, but an astonishing, meticulously balanced justice, as if every joy and sorrow were weighed on a divine scale. Persevere in your duty, maintain your focus on true goodness, and let your actions be guided solely by what benefits the whole of humanity. You are a fragment of a much greater whole, and eventually you will dissolve back into the source that birthed you, reabsorbed into the universal reason. We are like small lumps of incense placed upon a single vast altar. One burns to ash today, another tomorrow, but the difference in timing is ultimately meaningless. Do not live as though you have 10,000 years ahead of you. The shadow of death is already cast over you. While you still draw breath, while it is still within your power, strive to be genuinely good. What a profound peace descends when you stop agonizing over what your neighbor says, thinks, or does, and focus entirely on the integrity and justice of your own actions. Run straight toward the finish line without looking left or right at the distractions of the crowd. Those who obsess over how they will be remembered after death forget that their future admirers will also inevitably die, and the fragile chain of memory will eventually break and fade into utter darkness. Even if human memory were eternal, what actual value does posthumous praise hold for the dead? For the living, it is merely a tool for temporary, superficial comfort. True beauty of any kind requires no external validation. Is an emerald's brilliance diminished if it goes unpraised? Is gold or ivory or a blossoming flower made any less perfect if ignored? Praise adds absolutely nothing to virtue, truth, or justice. If you seek peace, a wise man once said, do less. A more accurate phrasing would be, do only what is essential, and do it exactly as the nature of a social being requires. This brings a powerful dual satisfaction, the peace of eliminating the unnecessary and the excellence of doing the necessary well. Strip away the frivolous assumptions and the pointless actions that inevitably follow them. Try living the life of a genuinely good person, one who is deeply content with their allotted fate and profoundly satisfied by their own internal justice and kindness. The universe is either a beautifully ordered cosmos or a chaotic mishmash, yet even if it appears chaotic, it retains an underlying, undeniable order. You cannot maintain a structured, rational mind while simultaneously believing the universe surrounding it is entirely disordered. Recognize the pathetic nature of the alien who does not understand the world, the fugitive who flees his civic and moral duties, the blind who tightly shut their mind's eye, the beggar who relies entirely on others for his happiness, and the schismatic who violently severs his soul from the unified whole by resenting his fate. Love the humble art or discipline you have learned, and let it support you. Entrust your fate entirely and willingly to the divine, and walk through the remainder of your days as neither a tyrant over others nor a subservient slave to them. Cast your mind back to the era of Vespasian. You will see people doing exactly what they do today. Marrying, raising children, falling ill, dying, waging wars, celebrating, trading, flattering, agonizing, and plotting for power. That entire vibrant world is gone. Look at the era of Trajan. The exact same human drama played out with fierce intensity, and it too has utterly vanished. Review the records of countless ages and nations, and witness how many ambitious souls strove mightily, only to fall and decompose back into the raw, unthinking elements. Words that were once commonplace are now archaic and obsolete. Names that once commanded awe, Camillus, Scipio, Augustus, Hadrian, now sound like ancient, hollow myths. Everything fades into legend and is swiftly buried by the sands of oblivion. If this is the inevitable fate of the most brilliant and powerful, what of the ordinary masses? What then is truly worth our effort? Only this: a clear understanding mind, unselfish actions, speech that cannot lie, and a disposition that welcomes every single event as a necessary, familiar flow from the great universal spring. Willingly offer yourself to the fates and let them weave your thread into whatever grand tapestry they choose. Time is a violent, rushing river. No sooner does a thing appear than it is swept away by the current, and another takes its place, only to be carried off in turn. Everything is as familiar and predictable as a spring rose or a summer fruit. Disease, death, slander, conspiracy, all the things that delight or terrify the ignorant. The progression of the universe is not a random, disconnected catalogue, but a deeply logical, beautifully harmonious unfolding. Consider the fragile mortality of those who thought themselves masters of fate. How many doctors have died after solemnly furrowing their brows over the deathbeds of others? How many astrologers have perished after pompously predicting the demise of their clients? How many philosophers are gone after endless, exhausting debates about the nature of immortality? How many mighty generals and ruthless tyrants have fallen after shedding rivers of human blood? Entire magnificent cities, Helic, Pompeii, Herculaneum, have died and been swallowed by the earth. Human existence is a fleeting, trivial thing. Yesterday, a drop of seed. Tomorrow, a handful of ash or a puddle of embalming fluid. Pass through this brief moment in complete harmony with nature and come to your rest with a graceful acceptance. Be like the ripe olive that falls to the earth, quietly praising the tree that bore it and feeling gratitude for the soil that nourished it. Be like the great rock against which the ocean waves constantly crash. It stands firm and unmoved, and the raging waters eventually exhaust themselves, settling into a calm pool around its base. When faced with apparent hardship, do not say, "I am incredibly unlucky to have suffered this tragedy." Say instead, "I am profoundly lucky to have suffered this without being broken, without being corrupted by the present or terrified of the future. The event itself was not a true misfortune, but enduring it with a noble, unbroken spirit is the greatest of human fortunes. Always take the shortest, most direct path, the path laid down by nature. Speak and act with total health and absolute integrity, freeing yourself forever from the heavy, exhausting burdens of calculation, anxiety, and pretense." Book 5. In the quiet chill of the dawn, when the heavy blanket of sleep refuses to release its grip, you must actively summon a profound realization. You are rising to perform the essential work of a human being. Why should there be any cause for resentment or complaint if you are simply awakening to do precisely what you were created to do, and to fulfill the very purpose for which you were brought into this world? It is absurd to believe that you were fashioned by the universe merely to huddle beneath the warm covers and seek physical comfort. Look closely at the natural world around you. The plants, the sparrows, the ants, the spiders, and the bees are already awake, all diligently performing their specific tasks, harmonizing their unique roles to bring order to the cosmos. And yet, you hesitate to do the work of a human being. You drag your feet when you should be sprinting toward the duties demanded by your own nature. It is true that the body requires rest, but nature has established strict boundaries for sleep, just as it has for eating and drinking. You have already consumed your full quota of slumber, perhaps even exceeded it. Yet, when it comes to fulfilling your civic and moral obligations, you consistently fall short of the mark. This reluctance reveals a tragic truth. You do not truly love yourself. If you possessed genuine self-respect, you would embrace your own nature and fiercely pursue its demands. Consider the dedicated artisans of the world, the master engraver, the passionate dancer, or even the ambitious merchant. When they are consumed by their pursuits, they gladly sacrifice food and sleep to perfect their craft. Is the noble act of serving your fellow human beings somehow less valuable to you than these worldly trades? There is a profound, almost childlike simplicity in the act of brushing aside every annoying distraction and intrusive thought to achieve absolute crystalline stillness within the mind. You must cultivate the habit of recognizing that if an action or a word is inherently appropriate and just, then it is entirely worthy of you. Do not be paralyzed by the fear of subsequent criticism or the idle chatter of the crowd. If it is the right thing to do, never tell yourself that you are beneath it. Other people are driven by their own chaotic impulses and guided by their own flawed reasoning. You must not let their aimless wandering pull you from your path. Walk straight ahead, honoring both your individual nature and the universal nature, for they ultimately travel the exact same road. Perhaps you believe you lack the sharp intellect or the quick wit necessary for brilliant philosophical discourse. Even if this were true, it offers absolutely no excuse for moral laziness. There is a vast array of virtues that require no special genius to cultivate. Absolute honesty, profound gravity, endurance of physical hardship, austerity, a willing resignation to fate, patience, sincerity, and a strict moderation of your desires. You possess the innate capacity for high-mindedness and self-control right now. You could have liberated yourself from your own whining, grasping, and obsequious behavior long ago. If you are a little slow to grasp complex concepts, you must simply work harder at it rather than proudly wearing your sluggishness as a badge of honor or using it as a shield against duty. Observe how different people approach the act of giving. Some individuals perform a kindness and immediately begin calculating how they can extract a return favor, keeping a meticulous ledger of their good deeds. Others may not demand an immediate return, but they privately consider the recipient to be in their debt, fully conscious of the transaction. But there's a third, infinitely superior type of person, the one who acts beautifully, without a second thought. Like a vine that produces a rich harvest of grapes and asks for absolutely nothing in return, or a horse that has finished the race, or a bee that has securely stored its honey, this person simply moves on to the next act of living. They do not demand an audience or a reward for their virtue. They simply prepare to bear fruit again when the proper season arrives. Your actions should mirror this unconscious, effortless grace. When life hands you difficult circumstances, consider how a patient accepts a bitter prescription from a trusted physician. We are entirely accustomed to a doctor ordering us to undergo cold baths, painful surgeries, or grueling exercises to restore our physical health. We endure these trials willingly because we trust the ultimate goal is our recovery. You must view the events ordained by the universe in the exact same light. The cosmos has prescribed this specific hardship, this illness, or this loss for you because it is vitally necessary for the ultimate health and progression of the grand design. Every single occurrence is meticulously woven into the universal tapestry, just as the intricately cut stones of a great temple fit perfectly together to create a harmonious structure. The myriad events of destiny intertwine to form a single, unified purpose. To rebel against what happens to you is to act as a vandal, violently hacking away at the coherence of the world. Therefore, you must embrace your fate for two reasons. First, because it was specifically crafted and spun for you. And second, because the smooth functioning and very existence of the divine whole depend on your willing acceptance of this assigned burden. Do not become bitterly despondent if you fail to live up to your highest philosophical ideals every single day. When you stumble, as you inevitably will, simply gather yourself and rise again. Celebrate the fact that you are behaving like a human being, with all the imperfections that entails, and return to your principles with a renewed embrace. Remember that true philosophy is not a harsh, tyrannical schoolmaster constantly barking orders. It is a soothing ointment, a healing balm, designed to clear the vision of your soul. You are not meant to show off your strict obedience to reason, but to find profound rest and comfort within it. The things of this world are shrouded in such dense mystery that even the most brilliant minds have struggled to make sense of them. Everything is heartbreakingly impermanent and devoid of inherent meaning. The glittering prizes that humanity fights over can be owned by the most corrupt individuals, by thieves, tyrants, and the profoundly wicked. The physical world itself is a churning sewer of decay, liquid, dust, bones, and filth. The grandest marble is merely hardened dirt. The most exquisite purple robes are just sheep's wool, soaked in the blood of dead shellfish. Knowing this, what is there to genuinely value or desperately strive for? Our only logical response is to wait patiently for our final dissolution without giving way to panic or anger. Until that moment arrives, find your absolute refuge in two unshakable truths. Nothing can happen to you that is outside the bounds of nature, and no power on earth can force you to do anything that violates your own divine conscience. The quality of your existence is directly determined by the quality of your thoughts. Your soul is continually dyed by the color of your daily reflections. You must consciously saturate your mind with elevating principles. Remind yourself constantly that it is entirely possible to lead a noble, virtuous life regardless of your geographic location or social standing, even within the treacherous, echoing halls of a royal court. Remember that every created thing gravitates toward its intended purpose, and the ultimate purpose of a rational being is unselfish cooperation with others. When external events or the actions of ignorant people threaten to block your progress, you must execute a profound pivot of the mind. People are, of course, your primary occupation. You are meant to do them good and tolerate their flaws. But the moment they become an immovable obstruction to your proper tasks, they become as morally irrelevant to you as the wind, the sun, or a wild animal. They may temporarily impede your physical actions, but they can never impede your intentions or your internal disposition. The sovereign mind possesses the miraculous ability to adapt to any obstacle, converting the very thing that seeks to block its path into raw material for its own purpose. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. As you navigate the fleeting hours of this existence, keep the vastness of the universe constantly before your eyes. Consider the microscopic fraction of infinite time you have been allotted, a split second that is instantly swallowed by eternity. Think of your physical form, a tiny speck of matter, a fragile wisp of breath. Recognizing your own physical insignificance should instantly cure you of the madness of self-importance and the poison of indignation. If someone wrongs you, leave the offense where it lies. The injury belongs entirely to their character, not yours. Your only concern is to ensure that your own mind remains an impregnable fortress, completely unstirred by the agitations of the flesh. It is entirely normal for the hands and feet to experience strain when they are performing the intense labor for which they were designed. In the same way, the stresses and burdens you feel are the natural byproduct of living a human life. If these pressures are natural, they cannot be inherently evil. If a room becomes too smoky, you simply walk out the door. Apply this same logic to existence. If the conditions of life truly become unendurable, you always retain the absolute freedom to depart. But until circumstances force you to that extreme, recognize that you are free. No one can prevent you from acting with justice, speaking the truth, and treating your fellow citizens with the love and patience that the universal intelligence demands. Survey the full narrative of your life. Ask yourself how you have treated the gods, your parents, your teachers, your friends, and your servants. Have you maintained a pristine character? Have you resisted the intoxicating lures of pleasure and the paralyzing grip of pain? Have you met unkindness with unwavering kindness? You have witnessed the endless repetition of the human drama, the pointless bustling, the shifting alliances, the desperate grasping for power. Soon, all of it will fade into the mist. You will be nothing more than scattered ashes or dry bones. Perhaps a fading name, and eventually not even an echo. True good fortune is not something delivered by the unpredictable whims of fate. True, unassailable good fortune is the masterpiece you construct for yourself. A life defined by a noble character, pure intentions, and consistently just actions. Book 6, the fundamental substance of the universe, is endlessly pliable and completely obedient to the natural law. The governing reason that shapes this material harbors no malice. It knows no evil, commits no wrong, and inflicts no genuine harm upon anything. It is the silent architect of every beginning and the author of every inevitable end. Your sole concern must be to perform your duty with unwavering correctness. It makes absolutely no difference whether you are freezing or comfortably warm, exhausted from lack of sleep, or fully rested, showered with public contempt, or bathed in honors. Even the act of dying is simply another of our assigned tasks in this existence. And like any other duty, it requires only that we handle the present moment appropriately and do what needs to be done. Direct your gaze deeply inward. Never allow the true essence or the inherent value of any object or event to escape your understanding. Recognize that in a very short time, every physical thing you see will undergo a profound transformation. If the universe is a unified whole, these things will be absorbed into it. If it is merely a collection of particles, they will simply scatter like smoke. The guiding intelligence of the cosmos knows exactly what it is doing, what materials it possesses, and what ultimate purpose it serves. When someone wrongs you, the most absolute and elegant revenge is to refuse to become like them. Find your singular joy and your resting place in moving seamlessly from one unselfish, socially beneficial act to another, keeping the divine order constantly in your thoughts. The mind is a sovereign entity, possessing the unique power to awaken and direct itself. It molds its own character and dictates exactly how it interprets every experience. Everything that unfolds in the world does so according to the dictates of nature, completely independent of any external or internal forces beyond that natural law. Contemplate the two ultimate possibilities of existence. Either the universe is a random mixture, interaction, and eventual dispersal of atoms, or it is a deeply unified, purposeful design. If it is chaotic dispersal, why should you crave to linger in a world of meaningless confusion? Why worry about anything other than the inevitable return to dust? Dispersal is certain, regardless of what you do. But if the universe is governed by intelligent design, then bow your head in reverence, maintain your serenity, and place your absolute trust in the power that orchestrates the whole. When the unavoidable shocks of life jar you, retreat immediately into the citadel of your own mind. Do not lose the rhythm of your internal harmony for a second longer than necessary. You will master this harmony far better by constantly returning to it. Imagine having both a stepmother and a biological mother. You would fulfill your obligations to the stepmother, but your heart would always lead you back to your true home. Your life at the imperial court is the stepmother. Philosophy is your true mother. Return to her constantly to find your rest. She alone makes the burdens of the court endurable, and she makes you endurable to those around you. Apply a ruthless clarity to the things of this world. When you sit before a lavish feast, recognize it for what it truly is, the dead carcass of a fish, a bird, or a pig. Understand that the most expensive vintage wine is merely fermented grape juice, and the majestic purple robes of royalty are nothing more than sheep's wool dyed with the blood of shellfish. Apply this same piercing analysis to the act of physical intimacy, seeing it merely as the friction of flesh and the brief release of fluid. Cultivate this habit of seeing completely through the glittering facade of things, stripping away the encrusted legends and societal reverence to expose their naked, unremarkable reality. Arrogance is a master illusionist. It seduces you precisely when you believe you are engaged in the most vital and important affairs. The objects that captivate the ignorant masses are generally held together by basic physical forces or simple biological growth, like stones, wood, or fig trees. Those with slightly more refined tastes admire things animated by a living soul, such as flocks and herds. Those possessing still higher sophistication value things guided by a rational mind, perhaps admiring technical expertise or the sheer accumulation of wealth and the slaves who produce it. But the individual who truly revere the universal, civic-minded intelligence that we all share looks completely past these trivialities. Their sole focus is on preserving the purity of their own rational mind, ensuring it remains unselfish and perfectly aligned with the common good of their fellow citizens. The world is a theater of constant flux. Some things are rushing headlong into existence, while others are swiftly departing. Even among the things currently present, parts are already dying away. This relentless wave of change constantly remakes the universe, just as the endless march of time renews eternity. In this rushing river of existence, where no firm foothold can ever be found, it is madness to place high value on anything that sweeps past. It is like falling deeply in love with a sparrow that flits into your vision and vanishes a moment later. Life itself is nothing more than the biological mechanics of blood and breath, the simple drawing in and expelling of the same air we share with the beasts. What then should we truly prize? Not the basic functions of breathing or digestion, which we share with plants and animals, not the fleeting impulses that jerk us around like marionettes, not the empty applause of the crowd, which is nothing more than the meaningless clacking of tongues. Having discarded the hunger for public recognition, what remains worthy of our devotion? It is simply this: to act or to refrain from acting in perfect accordance with our design. Every art and trade aims at this identical goal, that the creation should fulfill its intended purpose. The gardener, the horse trainer, and the teacher all strive for this. If you hold fast to this singular prize, the perfection of your own character, you will be immune to the seduction of everything else. If you fail to release your grip on external desires, you will never taste true freedom. You will remain enslaved to envy, paranoia, and the constant fear that someone will steal what you covet. A mind that honors its own intrinsic value is deeply satisfied, living in perfect harmony with its community and in serene alignment with the decrees of the gods. The elements of the physical world move in simple directions, up, down, or sideways. But the trajectory of moral virtue is entirely different. It is a profound, steady progression along a path that is often invisible, moving inexorably forward. Consider the strange hypocrisy of human ambition. People routinely withhold admiration from their own contemporaries, the very people they share their lives with, yet they desperately crave the praise of future generations. People they have never met and will never know. To mourn the fact that people born centuries from now might not celebrate your name is as irrational as being upset that your great-grandfather did not sing your praises. Never mistake your own personal difficulty with a task as proof of its impossibility. If a virtuous action is humanly possible, you must confidently claim it as being within your own capabilities. In the gymnasium, our sparring partners may accidentally headbutt us or scratch us, leaving painful bruises. We do not despise them for it, nor do we label them as inherently violent or malicious. We simply maintain a cautious distance. Apply this wisdom to the arena of daily life. When those who share our world strike out and injure us, we must excuse their actions and simply step back, keeping a friendly distance completely devoid of suspicion or hatred. If any person can clearly demonstrate that my actions or my judgments are incorrect, I will change them with a profound sense of gratitude. My ultimate quest is the truth, and the truth has never harmed anyone. The only true harm comes from stubbornly clinging to one's own ignorance and self-deception. When you interact with irrational animals or inanimate objects, handle them with generous, straightforward practicality. But when you engage with your fellow human beings, remember that they share the divine spark of reason. Treat them with the dignity that rationality demands, and invoke the gods to bless your endeavors. Do not agonize over the brevity of the time you have to practice these virtues. Even a single, well-lived afternoon is more than enough. The mighty Alexander the Great and his lowly mule driver met the exact same fate when they died. Both were either reabsorbed into the universal life force or scattered as identical atoms. When you are overwhelmed, remember the staggering complexity occurring within your own body and soul every single second. It should not shock you that the vast, all-encompassing universe is managing an infinite number of events simultaneously. If you are asked to spell a word, you do not shriek the letters out in a blind rage. If someone loses their temper during the process, you do not mirror their fury. You simply and calmly enunciate each letter. Approach your life's duties with the same methodical calm. Break every responsibility down into its component parts and execute them systematically, completely refusing to meet anger with anger. It is a profound cruelty to forbid people from pursuing what they genuinely believe to be their own good. Yet, whenever you lose your temper at their misbehavior, you are doing exactly that. They are acting out of a misguided attraction to what they think will benefit them. If they are wrong, your duty is to gently educate them and illuminate their error, not to explode in rage. Death is merely the cessation of sensory input, the snapping of the strings that allow our emotions to jerk us around, the halting of the brain's frantic calculations, and the final liberation from our enslavement to the demanding, decaying flesh. It is a profound disgrace when the soul surrenders and gives up the struggle for virtue while the physical body is still robust and functioning. Guard yourself fiercely against the subtle, corrupting stain of imperial power. Do not become stained by the purple. Fight to remain exactly the person that the study of philosophy intended you to be. Be straightforward, deeply ethical, reverent, unpretentious, and a relentless champion of justice. Love your fellow human beings and execute your duties with absolute dedication. Let the example of Antoninus be your constant guide. Remember his unflagging energy for rational action, his unshakable calm in the face of crisis, his profound humility, and his gentle expression. Recall how he refused to let any matter rest until he had examined it with exhaustive, surgical precision. He bore unfair criticism without ever returning fire. He was completely immune to the hurried panic of the court and possessed an infallible radar for truth, utterly rejecting the poison of informers and sycophants. He lived a life of stark simplicity in his diet, his clothing, and his quarters, working tirelessly from dawn until dusk. He was a rock of reliability to his friends, tolerating open disagreement with his policies and rejoicing when someone offered a superior idea. He revered the gods without a single trace of neurotic superstition. Strive to emulate him in all these things, so that when your final hour arrives, your conscience will be as clear and luminous as his. Wake up and reclaim your mind. Once you have shaken off the fog of sleep and realized that your terrors were merely dreams, look at the waking world with the same clear, dismissive eyes. Treat the chaotic events surrounding you as nothing more than the phantoms of a dream. I am a composite of a soul and a body. To the physical body, all experiences are fundamentally meaningless because it lacks the capacity to judge them. To my conscious mind, the only things that possess true meaning are its own deliberate actions, which are entirely under its sovereign control. Even then, only the actions of the immediate present matter. The past and the future are equally out of its grasp. It is entirely natural for the hands and feet to experience strain when doing the work they were designed for. It is equally natural for a human being to experience stress and pressure when living a fully engaged human life. If it is natural, it cannot be fundamentally bad. Observe the profound interconnectedness of all things. The universe is a single vast entity, one nature, one soul. Everything that occurs feeds into a unified experience and moves with a single synchronized motion. Every event is the logical, necessary consequence of the one that preceded it. The cosmos is not a random collection of disconnected facts, but a deeply interwoven tapestry of astonishing harmony. If the gods have determined my fate, their decisions are inherently good. It is logically impossible to conceive of a divine being making a flawed or malicious choice. Why would they conspire to cause me harm? What possible benefit could that bring to the universe, which is their primary care? And even if they have not made a specific decree regarding my individual life, they have certainly orchestrated the general welfare of the whole, and I must gladly embrace whatever happens as a necessary part of that grand design. If the universe is a godless, arbitrary void, I still possess the sovereign power to govern myself and seek my own true benefit, which is to live as a rational, civic-minded being serving the global community. Do not let the repetitive nature of life wear you down, just as the constant spectacles of the arena eventually grate on the nerves because they are always the same. The cycle of human existence is a continuous repetition of identical causes and identical effects. Observe the endless parade of humanity, brilliant philosophers, legendary heroes, powerful kings, and arrogant tyrants. All of them are long dead and buried underground. What harm has this oblivion done them? Our only vital task is to pass through this fleeting existence with absolute truthfulness and justice, maintaining a deep, abiding patience for those who fail to do the same. When you feel your spirit faltering, draw strength from the virtues actively displayed by the people around you. Notice the relentless energy of one, the quiet modesty of another, the open-handed generosity of a third. There is nothing more profoundly uplifting than seeing moral excellence vividly embodied in the living, breathing human beings who share your world. You do not fall into despair because your physical body weighs only a certain amount and not infinitely more. By the same logic, you must not feel bitter or cheated that your lifespan is limited to a specific number of years and not eternity. Just as you accept the spatial boundaries of your physical form, you must gracefully accept the temporal boundaries of your existence. Make every effort to persuade others through reason and gentle guidance, but if justice demands action, you must proceed independently, regardless of their opposition. If you are met with overwhelming, insurmountable force, do not surrender to rage. Fall back gracefully upon acceptance and peaceability, using the very obstacle that blocked you as an opportunity to practice a different, equally vital virtue. Remember that your intentions are always subject to external circumstances. You never set out to achieve the strictly impossible. Your true goal was simply to try, and in that you have achieved total success. The ambitious person mistakenly ties their own happiness to the unpredictable actions and opinions of others. The self-indulgent person ties their happiness to the fleeting sensations of the physical world. But the sane, rational individual anchors their well-being exclusively to their own deliberate, honorable actions. You possess the absolute power to refuse to turn any external event into an internal crisis. You are never obligated to be upset. External things do not have a voice. They cannot dictate your emotional response. Train yourself to listen with profound, unwavering attention when others speak. Strive with all your might to step outside yourself and enter into the very architecture of their minds. Always remember this fundamental rule of existence, that which is not harmful to the hive cannot possibly be harmful to the bee. Book 7, Evil is Nothing New. Across the ages, history is merely a repetition of the same predictable vices, the same ancient dramas playing out in modern houses. When faced with this mundane reality, remember that your understanding is like a bed of glowing coals. It can always be blown back into a fierce flame. You possess the absolute power to control your thoughts, and because of this, you remain untouchable by anything outside your own mind. The chaotic scramble of daily life, the grand processions, the marching armies, the frantic scurrying of mice, the mindless feeding of captive fish is nothing but a theatre of puppets jerked on strings. We must look upon this restless theatre with deep acceptance, never with arrogant disdain, constantly reminding ourselves that a person's true worth is precisely measured by the true worth of the things they dedicate their energy toward. In every conversation, listen intently to what is truly being said, and in every action, examine the ultimate result. If your intellect is equipped for the task at hand, employ it as a tool given by nature. If it falls short, gracefully step aside and yield the work to someone more capable. Or collaborate with them to ensure the community's needs are met. Do not let pride prevent you from seeking help. You are like a soldier ordered to storm a wall, and if you are wounded, relying on a comrade to pull you up is simply part of the mission. Abandon all anxiety regarding the future. If you must face it, you will do so armed with the exact same weapons of reason that protect you today. Recognize that the universe is a profoundly interconnected web, a sacred fabric where no single thread is isolated. All things are woven together in a beautiful, harmonious order governed by one shared divinity, one common substance, and a single, unifying law of reason that courses through every rational creature. Every physical thing is swiftly absorbed back into the natural world, its animating spark returning to the universal source, its memory rapidly buried beneath the sands of time. To act against this universal reason is to act unnaturally. A rational being must stand straight on its own, not be held straight by external forces. We must see ourselves not merely as disconnected parts of a whole, but as vital, integrated limbs of a single, rational body. If you simply view yourself as a detached piece, you have not yet learned to truly love your fellow human beings, and you perform good deeds merely out of a dry sense of duty, rather than recognizing that in helping them, you are fundamentally helping yourself. Let the storms of life batter whatever they can reach. The flesh may suffer, but the mind remains a sovereign fortress. It does not create its own fears or desires. Like a flawless emerald that continuously whispers to itself, "No matter what happens, I must remain an emerald and keep my color." Your only task is to maintain your moral integrity, entirely indifferent to the noise and actions of those around you. Do you harbor a fear of change? Consider that nothing in the universe can occur without it. You cannot nourish yourself without transforming the food you eat. Nor can any vital process in nature take place without a profound alteration of state. You are caught in the rushing rapids of existence, a current that has already swallowed the greatest thinkers, kings, and heroes of the past. Everything changes. Everything is swept away. Your only legitimate fear should be the fear of acting contrary to human nature or doing the right thing in the wrong manner. Very soon, you will have forgotten the world entirely, and the world will have completely forgotten you. Therefore, cultivate a genuine affection even for those who stumble and fail. Recognize that they are your kin, acting blindly out of ignorance, and that both of you will soon be dead. Most importantly, realize that their mistakes cannot truly harm you because they cannot taint or diminish your own guiding intelligence. Nature acts as a masterful sculptor, taking the raw wax of existence and molding it into a beast, then melting it down to form a tree, a human, and something else again. There is no tragedy in being assembled and no harm in being taken apart. When someone offends you, immediately pause to consider their internal compass of good and evil. Once you comprehend their misguided perspective, your outrage will instantly evaporate, replaced by a profound compassion. If your understanding of right and wrong aligns with theirs, you must forgive them. If it differs, they are simply lost in the dark and desperately need your pity, not your wrath. Never obsess over the things you lack. Instead, take a careful inventory of the blessings you possess and imagine how desperately you would crave them if they were taken away. Yet, you must be extremely cautious not to overvalue these possessions, lest their eventual loss shatter your peace of mind. Retreat into the quiet center of yourself. The rational mind is completely satisfied by the simple act of behaving justly and the profound calm that follows. Erase the false images that cloud your vision. Stop allowing yourself to be yanked around by the strings of impulse. Break down every object into its fundamental cause and raw material and clearly anticipate the hour of your own death. When pain strikes, remember that it is never a disgrace, nor does it degrade the intellect. Unendurable pain destroys the body and thus ends itself. Chronic pain can be endured by a mind that consciously detaches from the physical sensation, allowing the wounded flesh to issue its own silent complaints. Look past the empty allure of ambition, seeing human endeavors as shifting sand dunes, each new wind completely burying the tracks of the one before. To truly understand human life, you must mentally elevate yourself and look down upon the earth from a great height. Observe the endless chaotic blending of herds and armies, births and deaths, weddings and funerals, the noisy courtrooms and the silent deserts. It is a vast harmony composed of violently clashing opposites. Look back at the empires that have risen and fallen and you will perfectly predict the future, for it will beat to the exact same inescapable rhythm. To live 40 years is to witness 1,000, stand firm like a wrestler, feet planted squarely, ready to absorb the sudden, unpredictable shocks of life, rather than lightly leaping about like a dancer. Do not allow your mind to be enslaved by those who despise themselves. You do not need the applause of a crowd that cannot even find peace within its own skin. Every single moment presents you with 3 distinct obligations: to accept the present circumstance with absolute humility, to treat the people around you with exact justice, and to scrutinize your own thoughts to prevent any irrationality from taking root. Do not waste your energy trying to decipher the minds of others. Fix your gaze firmly on the path nature has laid out for you. We were designed specifically to cooperate with one another and to exercise our reason to overcome the base urges of the body. Imagine that your life has already ended, that you have died today. Now, take the surplus time you have been miraculously granted and live it exactly as nature intended. Embrace whatever destiny weaves into your life, for nothing could be more perfectly suited to you. When confronted with the viciousness or shamelessness of others, remind yourself that a world entirely free of such people is a logical impossibility. Do not demand the impossible. Nature provides antidotes for every human flaw. For cruelty, it gave us the weapon of genuine kindness. Dig deeply into your own soul, for there lies a perpetual spring of goodness that will never run dry as long as you are willing to excavate. Make sure your face reflects the intelligence of your mind, remaining stable and free from contortion. You have been granted the profound ability to draw your own boundaries, to locate your well-being entirely within your own choices. You can live a life of perfect, unassailable peace. Even if wild beasts are tearing at your flesh, so long as your mind remains a tranquil, objective observer, taking every piece of adversity and utilizing it as the perfect raw material for the exercise of virtue. Book 8. You must begin by confronting a painful truth. You can no longer claim to have lived your entire life as a philosopher. You can see your own flaws clearly, and your imperfections are visible to others as well. You are tainted by the world, and the pristine reputation of a perfect sage is now beyond your reach. The heavy responsibilities of your imperial position serve as further obstacles. Accept this reality and discard your anxiety over how you are perceived. Instead, focus entirely on ensuring that whatever time you have left is lived exactly as your nature demands. You have wandered through countless distractions, wealth, fame, sensual indulgence, and empty theories, and you have finally realized that none of them hold the secret to a well-lived life. True fulfillment is found only in the relentless practice of human virtue, in absolute fairness, unwavering self-control, quiet courage, and the mastery of your own free will. When you prepare to take any action, interrogate your motives. Ask yourself how it will truly affect you and whether you will soon look back on it with bitter regret. In a very short time, you will be dead and the slate will be wiped entirely clean. Your only concern should be whether your current action is worthy of a responsible citizen of the universe, subject to the exact same divine laws that govern the cosmos. Contrast the frantic, blood-soaked legacies of Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, and Pompey with the serene, enduring mastery of thinkers like Diogenes, Heraclitus, and Socrates. The philosophers understood the causes and materials of the world. They possessed their own minds. The great conquerors, despite their immense power, were nothing more than miserable slaves to their own endless anxieties and insatiable ambitions. You must accept that people will continue their frustrating, ignorant behavior even if you hold your breath until you turn blue. Therefore, your first vital step is to banish all anxiety, recognizing that the overarching intelligence of nature controls everything. Soon, you will be nothing and nowhere, completely swallowed by oblivion, just like the mighty emperors who ruled before you. Your second step is to lock your gaze entirely onto your immediate duty. Remind yourself constantly of what human nature requires, and then execute that duty without the slightest hesitation. Speak the truth exactly as you see it, but always temper your words with genuine kindness and deep humility, completely devoid of hypocrisy. Recognize that nature's sole occupation is constant transformation. It exists to shift the elements, moving them from one temporary state to another. Do not be terrified of this flux, for there is absolutely nothing new in it. Everything is profoundly familiar, maintaining the exact same eternal proportions. True progress for a rational mind is defined by a refusal to accept false impressions, a dedication to unselfish acts, and the willing embrace of whatever destiny assigns. Just as a single leaf shares the fundamental nature of the massive tree that bears it, you share the nature of the universe. But unlike the blind, unthinking leaf, human nature is rational, capable of recognizing the perfect proportionate justice that the cosmos weaves into the fabric of reality. Abandon the distraction of your books and your theoretical reading. You simply do not have the time left for that. Use your remaining days to crush your own arrogance, to achieve absolute victory over the lures of pleasure and the threats of pain, and to permanently outgrow the petty hunger for public reputation. Furthermore, cease your internal complaining about the burdens of your station and the exhausting people who populate your court. If you must feel remorse, feel it only when you have neglected something genuinely beneficial to your character. Since self-indulgence brings no true benefit to a rational soul, it can never be considered a good, and passing it up should never cause you an ounce of regret. Look past the deceptive surface of the world, strip away the ornate exterior of every object and event, to examine its fundamental substance, its underlying cause, and its intended purpose. See clearly how long each thing is actually fated to endure. When the heavy, seductive pull of sleep makes you reluctant to leave your bed in the morning, remind yourself forcefully that working for the common good is the defining characteristic of a human being. Sleeping is a biological function you share with mindless animals, but conscious, unselfish action is your unique, natural, and most deeply satisfying calling. When you must interact with others, instantly consider their internal definitions of good and evil. If their lives are driven by the blind pursuit of physical pleasure and the terrified avoidance of pain, then their foolish, selfish actions are practically inevitable. You should no more be shocked by their behavior than you would be surprised to see a fig tree producing figs, or a seasoned physician encountering a patient with a fever. If they are wrong, correct them gently. If you cannot correct them, the failure is yours. Blame no one, Blaming the gods is blasphemy, and blaming atoms is sheer stupidity. Simply repair the damage if you can, and if you cannot, realize that anger achieves absolutely nothing. Remember that the universe is like a playful hand tossing a ball into the air. The ball gains absolutely no inherent value or dignity as it rises, and it suffers no tragedy or punishment when it plummets back to the earth. We are merely bubbles expanding and bursting, candles burning down to a sudden darkness. Turn the objects of your desire inside out and see them as they truly are, aging, rotting, decaying. The ones who sing praises and the ones being praised are all sprinting toward the exact same rapid oblivion, playing out their fleeting, self-important drama on a microscopic speck of a vast, indifferent universe. Focus exclusively on the present thought, the present action, the present word. You possess the power to choose goodness today, yet you consistently delay it until tomorrow. Whatever action you take, offer it freely to the welfare of humanity. Whatever circumstance befalls you, accept it gracefully as a direct, necessary gift from the grand design. Look at the entirety of life with an unflinching, analytical gaze. It is like the filthy water of the public baths, a disgusting mixture of oil, sweat, and grime. Consider the great inescapable chain of departures. Verus left Lucilla behind, and then Lucilla died. Maximus left Secunda, and then Secunda died. The brilliant minds, the arrogant rulers, the sophisticated thinkers, they are all gone. Some became celebrated legends, and others faded so completely that even the legends vanished into thin air. Your own components will soon be scattered in the exact same manner. The only genuine joy available to a human being is found in purely human action, showing kindness to your kin, rejecting the tyranny of the senses, accurately analyzing your environment, and perfectly aligning yourself with the natural order. When pain strikes, understand that it either affects the body, which is entirely the body's concern, or it affects the soul. But the soul retains the absolute sovereign power to refuse to be degraded by it. All human urges, aversions, and judgments reside strictly within, where no external evil can possibly breach the walls. Wipe away your misperceptions. Stop the frantic twitching of your puppet strings. You have the innate power to protect your mind from lust and confusion, to view reality with crystalline clarity, and to treat every person and event exactly as they deserve. Imagine the glorious, bustling court of Augustus. See his family, his brilliant advisors, his doctors, his priests. Now realize that the entire court is dead and buried. It is not just individuals who perish, but entire ancient bloodlines, ending abruptly with a lonely tombstone reading the last of his line. Think of the desperate, sweating anxiety of those ancestors to secure an heir, only for the inevitable extinction to claim them anyway. You must construct your life patiently, brick by brick, action by action. If each act achieves its specific, immediate goal, be entirely satisfied. No external force can prevent you from acting with justice and wisdom. If a physical obstacle blocks your path, simply incorporate that very obstacle into your design, using it as the raw material for a new, equally virtuous action. Accept the gifts of fortune without the slightest trace of arrogance, and be prepared to relinquish them without the slightest trace of regret. Imagine a severed hand, a foot, or a decapitated head lying in the dust, entirely separated from the body it once belonged to. This grotesque image is exactly what you make of yourself when you rebel against your destiny or commit a selfish, isolated act. You violently sever yourself from the unified, rational body of nature. Yet, humanity is granted a miraculous privilege by the divine. Unlike any other severed limb, we possess the power to voluntarily graft ourselves back onto the whole. We can repent, realign our will, and return to our rightful place in the cosmic order. Do not allow your mind to be crushed by anticipating the totality of your life. Do not obsessively picture every terrible thing that might conceivably happen in the future. When faced with a present difficulty, isolate it. Ask yourself, what is so truly unbearable about this specific immediate moment? You will be profoundly embarrassed to answer. Remind yourself that neither the past nor the future has any actual weight. It is only the razor-thin present that you must endure, and its power over you is easily broken if you refuse to magnify it with your imagination. External things are never the true source of your distress. Your agony stems entirely from your own assessment of them, a judgment you possess the immediate power to revoke. If your distress comes from a flaw in your own character, what prevents you from correcting your mind right now? If you are paralyzed by an impossible obstacle, simply accept the impediment gracefully. Let it be, and depart from life with a perfectly clear conscience, knowing you have done all that was humanly possible and that you embrace the very force that stops you. A mind free of turbulent passions is an impregnable fortress. There is no sanctuary in the universe more secure. To fail to see this is sheer ignorance. To see it and refuse to seek refuge, there is the definition of absolute misery. Stick strictly to your first impressions. You see that someone has insulted you. You do not see that you have been harmed. You see that your child is sick. You do not see that they will inevitably die. Refuse to extrapolate. Do not add the heavy, toxic layers of your own imagination to the simple facts, and you will remain perfectly safe. If you encounter a bitter cucumber, throw it out. If there are sharp brambles in your path, simply walk around them. That is all you need to do. Do not stand there in the road demanding to know why the universe contains bitter cucumbers and thorny bushes. A master carpenter would laugh at you for being shocked by sawdust on his floor. Nature is the ultimate craftsman. It takes the broken, decaying remnants of the world and continually sweeps them back into its own furnace, forging new life from the ashes without ever needing external materials or a place to dump its waste. Your thoughts must never be random. Your actions must never be careless. Do not let your soul splinter outward in chaotic distraction, nor let it collapse inward in bitter despair. Imagine a man standing beside a pristine, bubbling spring of sweet water, aggressively shouting curses at it. The spring simply continues to yield fresh water. Even if he shovels mud and manure into the pool, the steady current will swiftly carry the filth away, washing itself completely clean without retaining a single stain. You can become exactly like that perpetual spring, maintaining a constant, effortless purity through humility, honesty, and an unyielding patience. To be ignorant of the universe is to be a stranger in your own home. To be ignorant of its purpose is to be entirely blind to your own identity. Why would you ever desire the applause of people who are so profoundly lost that they do not even know where they are or who they are? Do you truly want the praise of men who secretly despise themselves, who spend their days trapped in endless cycles of regret and self-loathing? The evil committed by another person does not harm the universe, nor does it truly harm you. The only victim of their malice is the perpetrator, and they have the power to stop harming themselves the moment they choose to awaken. Their will is as completely independent of yours as their breathing. If your happiness were vulnerable to the actions of others, the divine would have designed a deeply flawed world. Consider the profound nature of sunlight. It extends outward, illuminating everything in its path, but it does not violently pour out or exhaust itself. When it strikes a solid object, it does not angrily batter it. It simply holds its ground and bathes the object in brilliant light. Your mind must function in the exact same way. It must extend its understanding gently and firmly, not violently crashing into obstacles, but illuminating whatever it touches. Those who refuse your light merely create their own darkness. Fear of death is fundamentally illogical. It is either the fear of experiencing total nothingness, in which case you will feel absolutely no pain, or the fear of a new kind of experience, which simply means you will continue to exist in a different, transformed state. You were born to coexist with your fellow human beings. Your absolute, unwavering duty is to either patiently instruct them or quietly endure them. Step inside their minds and generously allow them to step inside yours. Book 9. To commit an injustice is to commit a profound act of blasphemy against the oldest and most venerable of the gods, nature itself. The universal design constructed rational beings specifically to support, care for, and benefit one another according to their true worth. To violate this inherent cooperative design is to wage a direct war against the divine order. Similarly, to utter a lie, whether deliberately or through willful ignorance, is to blaspheme against the very fabric of reality, for nature is the absolute source of all that is true. We commit an equal blasphemy when we frantically pursue physical pleasure as the ultimate good and flee from pain as the ultimate evil. A soul trapped in this delusion will inevitably find itself cursing the cosmos, bitterly complaining that the universe does not treat the good and the bad as they deserve, observing that the wicked often revel in luxury while the virtuous endure suffering. We must clearly understand that nature is completely indifferent to these fleeting conditions. To align our minds perfectly with nature, we must cultivate that exact same unwavering indifference. True misfortune is not found in the atmosphere or the environment. It is a mental cancer, the deep rot of dishonesty, hypocrisy, self-indulgence, and pride. This spiritual sickness is infinitely worse than any airborne plague or tainted climate. An atmospheric disease can only threaten the biological life of your physical body, but the cancer of the mind destroys your very humanity. Do not look upon your inevitable death with terror or disdain, but welcome it as simply another necessary, required function of the natural world. It is fundamentally no different from the onset of youth, the fading into old age, the growing of teeth, or the heavy process of childbirth. A thoughtful person anticipates the moment the soul will be released from its physical container with the same patient, observant serenity a mother possesses while waiting for her child to emerge from the womb. If your mind requires further comfort to reconcile itself to the grave, consider the nature of the world you are leaving behind. You will no longer be forced to endure the exhausting, discordant noise of people whose values are completely alien to yours. While you must remain gentle and compassionate with them while you live, it is a profound relief to realize that you will soon be free from a society that does not share your philosophical vision. Remember that to do harm to another is to do profound harm to yourself. Furthermore, you can commit a terrible injustice simply by doing nothing, by omitting the duties you owe to your fellow citizens. Ground yourself in this exact present moment with 3 unbreakable disciplines: objective judgment of the world, unselfish action toward others, and a willing, wholehearted acceptance of whatever external events fate delivers. Extinguish the chaotic, terrifying fires of your own imagination. Turn your desperate desires to stone and keep your mind completely centered on its own sovereign power. All living things share a fundamental, elemental connection. Earthly materials naturally gravitate toward the earth. Fluid things flow together. Airborne elements rise to the sky. Rational beings possess an even more profound magnetic attraction to their own kind, inherently seeking community, friendship, and harmony. If you look closely at human society, you will see that rational beings are the only creatures who have actively tried to sever this natural instinct, pulling away from one another in selfishness. Yet, however hard they try to escape it, the overwhelming pull of nature remains stronger. If you encounter those who have lost this natural instinct and strayed into darkness, your duty is to gently convince them of their error. If they refuse to listen and you cannot change their minds, you must fall back upon the divine gift of patience. The gods themselves show endless, benevolent patience with human flaws, even assisting ignorant people in acquiring the superficial things they desire, like wealth or health. You must emulate this divine tolerance. Do not perform your duties to rouse pity, to win sympathy, or to garner an audience's applause. Let your only focus be on acting and resting exactly as the logic of a civic-minded being requires. You possess the supreme absolute ability to strip away anxiety right now because it exists nowhere outside of you. It lives entirely within your own perceptions. The external objects and events of the world hover outside your door, mute and unmoving. They cannot speak to you, and they cannot dictate your emotional response. Only your mind has the power to analyze them and assign them meaning. Realize that true goodness and true evil are not things that are done to you. They are found exclusively in what you do. Consider a stone thrown into the air. It gains absolutely no inherent value or dignity as it rises, and it suffers no tragedy or degradation when it plummets back to the earth. When you feel yourself becoming overwhelmed by the judgments of others, pause and look deeply into the minds of the people whose approval you so desperately fear. Observe how they live, what they value, and how harshly they judge themselves. You will immediately realize how absurd it is to tremble before critics who are completely lost in their own illusions. Everything is in a state of violent, continuous flux, and very soon you and everyone you know will be transformed, swept away, and entirely forgotten. Plunge straight to the core of intelligence. Examine your own mind to ground it in justice. Examine the universe's mind to remember the massive whole you are a part of, and examine your neighbor's mind to distinguish their honest mistakes from calculated malice. You must participate in the life of your community through every single action. Any deed, however small, that does not ultimately serve the common good is an act of rebellion, a violent severing of yourself from the unified civic body. When you find yourself agonizing over the behavior of others or the shifting, unpredictable tides of fortune, remember that the great cosmic cycles have always been exactly the same. The identical play is staged century after century. Only the actors change. The Earth will eventually cover us all, and then the Earth itself will change in an endless, rhythmic wave of transformation. Imagine the grand, overarching design of the universe as a massive, sweeping flood, carrying everything along in its current. Look with pity upon the self-important fools who busy themselves with petty politics or arrogant philosophical posturing. Do not expect to magically bring about Plato's ideal republic, but be profoundly satisfied with the smallest step forward, recognizing that true philosophical work is modest and straightforward. Discard the heavy, useless junk that clutters your consciousness. Clear a vast, quiet space within yourself by contemplating the staggering scale of the universe and the infinite stretches of time that yawn before and after your brief existence. Look with cold, clinical clarity at the physical materials we are actually made of. Dust, liquid, decaying bones, and filth. The glittering gold that humanity murders for is merely hardened dirt. The majestic purple robes of emperors are nothing more than sheep's wool soaked in the blood of dead shellfish. Enough of this wretched, whining, monkey-like existence. There is absolutely nothing new, surprising, or tragic in any of it. If another person injures you out of malice, the true injury and the moral degradation fall solely upon them. As for the overarching universe, whether it is governed by a beautifully ordered providence, or is merely a chaotic, meaningless storm of colliding atoms, there is no logical reason for you to live in anxiety. If the gods possess true power, change the very nature of how you pray to them. Instead of begging the divine to grant your physical desires or to magically shield you from the things you fear, pray for the internal strength to stop fearing and to stop desiring altogether. Redirect your prayers toward the fortification of your own soul and watch what happens. Remember the example set by Epicurus during his final, painful illness. He did not waste his visitor's time by complaining about his physical agony or the failing state of his body. Instead, he maintained the sovereign serenity of his mind, continuing to discuss philosophy and demonstrating how the intellect can observe the body's suffering without ever surrendering to it. You must do the same in illness or any other worldly crisis. Finally, when you are confronted by the shamelessness, cruelty, or treachery of others, remind yourself immediately that a world entirely devoid of such individuals is a logical impossibility. Nature requires that the whole spectrum of humanity exist. By accepting that shameless people are a necessary part of the world, you will become infinitely more tolerant of the individual wrongdoer standing in front of you. Furthermore, nature has provided you with the perfect, indestructible antidote to their poison, genuine, unfeigned kindness. If someone breaks your trust or acts with ingratitude, the fault is ultimately yours for expecting a fundamentally flawed person to behave honorably. You were designed by nature to help others. When you extend kindness and assistance, you fulfill your ultimate natural purpose. To demand any further reward, gratitude, or recognition for simply functioning as a human being is a profound and tragic absurdity. Book 10. I ask my own soul, will you ever truly achieve goodness? Will you ever become simple, whole, and completely transparent, more visible than the very flesh that houses you? I wonder when you will finally experience the profound peace of an affectionate and loving disposition. Will there ever come a day when you are entirely fulfilled, when you cease your endless yearning and stop lusting after external things, whether they be people, physical pleasures, or simply more time to enjoy them? You must stop wishing for a different climate, a better location, or neighbors who are easier to tolerate. Instead, you must learn to be deeply, completely satisfied with exactly what you have. You must accept the entirety of the present moment, convincing yourself that everything you possess is a direct, deliberate gift from the gods. Everything they ordain is inherently good and designed for the preservation of the perfect, universal entity, that beautiful, generative force that connects all things and gathers the broken fragments of the world to birth new life. Your ultimate goal is to take your rightful stand as a fellow citizen alongside the gods and your fellow human beings, harboring no blame toward anyone and acting in a way that deserves no censure. Focus your absolute attention on what your nature demands, as if nothing else in the universe governed you. You must execute those demands and accept the results willingly, provided they do not degrade your fundamental nature as a living creature. Next, you must observe what your nature as a rational being requires and embrace that as well, provided it does not violate your civic duties to others. For anything that is truly rational is inherently civic. If you strictly adhere to these guiding principles, you will waste no time on frivolous distractions. Whenever you encounter a hardship, recognize that it is either endurable or unendurable. If it is within your capacity to endure it, then do so in silence and stop your endless complaining. If it is truly unendurable, it will ultimately destroy you, and in doing so, the suffering itself will cease. In that case, too, there is no need to complain. Remember that your mind possesses the extraordinary power to make almost anything endurable simply by framing it as a matter of personal duty or natural necessity. If those around you make mistakes, your responsibility is to correct them with gentle patience and point out exactly where their reasoning failed. If you find yourself incapable of doing this, the failure is yours alone, and you have no one else to blame. Whatever circumstances unfold in your life, know that they have been waiting for you since the very dawn of time. The intricate, unbreakable strands of fate have spent eternity weaving together your specific existence and the exact events that will befall you. Whether the universe is a swirling storm of random atoms or a perfectly ordered natural system, my first foundational truth remains the same. I am a solitary part of a vast world controlled by nature. My second truth is that I am intimately connected to all the other parts that resemble me. Armed with this understanding, I have absolutely no right to complain about any fate assigned to me by the whole. What is beneficial to the entirety of the universe can never truly harm the individual component, and the universe never generates anything that does not serve its own ultimate benefit. This is a law common to all natural things, but the universe possesses the unique distinction that no external force can ever compel it to harm itself. Therefore, by remembering my place within this grand design, I will accept everything that happens with serene grace. Because of my kinship with my fellow human beings, I will strip every ounce of selfishness from my actions. My sole aim will be to unite with them, directing every ounce of my energy toward the common good and fiercely avoiding anything that disrupts it. If I can maintain this discipline, my life will flow smoothly, exactly as one would expect the life of a dedicated citizen to flow when they embrace the decrees of their community. The universe is constructed from individual parts whose inevitable destruction is mandated by nature, though destruction is merely a term for necessary transformation. If this constant shifting were inherently harmful to the parts, the universe could not function smoothly. It is absurd to believe that nature would deliberately design its components to suffer and be utterly vulnerable to harm. It is equally absurd to believe that nature is simply blind to what happens within its own borders. Even if we discard the concept of a guiding nature and attribute everything to inherent physical properties, it remains completely illogical to accept that things are naturally prone to decay while simultaneously acting shocked or outraged when that decay actually occurs. The elements that compose you are merely returning to the sources from which they were borrowed. Our physical bodies are drawn downward to the earth, while our animating breath is pulled upward into the airy ether, eventually to be reabsorbed into the universal intelligence. Do not mistakenly believe that the matter you are made of has been with you since your birth. It is continually replenished by the food you ate and the air you breathed just yesterday. It is this constantly imported material that undergoes change, not the original essence your mother brought into the world. There are certain noble titles you must claim for yourself: upright, modest, straightforward, sane, cooperative, and disinterested. Guard these epithets fiercely and refuse to exchange them for baser labels. If you ever find that you have compromised them, work relentlessly to earn them back. Remember that sanity requires you to look at every single object and event with piercing clarity, never losing the thread of truth. Cooperation means a willing, joyful acceptance of whatever fate nature assigns you. Disinterest means elevating your mind far above the chaotic tug-of-war of physical sensations, completely ignoring the allure of fame and the terror of death. If you can maintain your grip on these virtues without caring in the slightest whether anyone else recognizes them in you, you will be utterly transformed into a new person, living a new existence. To cling to your old, degraded self, allowing yourself to be constantly mauled by the miseries of your current life, is the mark of a fool who is desperately terrified of letting go. You would be no better than the mangled gladiators in the arena, covered in blood and torn flesh, pitifully begging to be kept alive for just one more day, only to be thrown back to the same tearing claws. Anchor yourself to these few virtues. If they allow you to steer a steady course, consider yourself safe. If you feel yourself drifting and losing control, retreat to a quiet place where you can regain your footing. And if even that fails, then choose to leave this life altogether. Not with dramatic anger, but with straightforward, quiet dignity, knowing that your final successful act was recognizing when it was time to depart. To help you embody these virtues, constantly keep the gods in your thoughts. They do not desire your groveling flattery. They simply want all rational creatures to emulate their divine perfection. A fig tree must act like a fig tree, a bee like a bee, and a human being must act like a true human being. Do not let the chaotic operatics of daily life, the bitter interpersonal combat, or the poison of sloth and servility slowly erase the sacred principles you hold. You must align your actions and perceptions toward 3 strict goals: achieving practical, beneficial results, exercising deep analytical thought, and maintaining a quiet, unobtrusive confidence born of true understanding. When will you finally grant yourself the profound luxury of being simple, serious, and entirely focused on dissecting the true nature of the world around you? Observe the petty triumphs of humanity. A spider swells with pride when it catches a fly. A man puffs his chest when he snares a hare, catches a fish, or slaughters a barbarian on the battlefield. When you analyze their underlying mentalities, they are all driven by the exact same predatory instincts. You must train yourself to see exactly how all things seamlessly transform into one another. Apply this observation constantly, for nothing accelerates spiritual growth more effectively. Imagine a person who has completely stripped away their physical body, knowing that they will soon abandon the society of mortals. Such a person dedicates their entire being to serving justice in their actions and accepting nature in all external events. They waste no energy worrying about what others think or say about them. Their only concerns are whether their current action is undeniably right and whether they are graciously accepting their allotted fate. They have shed all superficial distractions, desiring nothing more than to walk a straight, unswerving path toward the divine. Why waste time second-guessing yourself? If the proper path is clear, walk down it cheerfully and do not look back. If the path is obscured, pause and seek the wisest counsel available. If insurmountable obstacles arise, forge ahead as best you can with the resources at hand, clinging fiercely to whatever seems most just. Justice is the ultimate perfect goal, and failing to achieve it is the only true defeat. A person who follows the universal reason in all things walks a beautiful line. They are relaxed, yet highly energetic, radiating a joyful serenity alongside an unbreakable seriousness. The moment you awaken, ask yourself if it genuinely matters whether ignorant people criticize you for doing the right thing. It matters not at all. Have you forgotten the horrifying reality of the people who so loudly dispense praise and blame? Have you forgotten how they behave in their private moments, the degrading nature of their desires, and the psychological crimes they commit within their own minds? They possess a faculty capable of generating loyalty, truth, and order, yet they twist it toward chaos. Nature is the great giver and the great confiscator. A person equipped with humility and understanding does not fight this reality. They look at nature and say, "Give what you will and take what you will." They say this not out of bitter defiance, but from a place of deep obedience and absolute goodwill. The time you have left is incredibly short. You must live as if you were entirely alone out in a desolate wilderness. Your physical location is irrelevant. Whether you are in a bustling capital or a remote desert, you are a citizen of the great universal city. Let the world finally witness a human being living in perfect harmony with nature. If the people around you cannot tolerate such a sight, let them kill you. Death is vastly preferable to living the way they do. Stop debating what constitutes a good person and simply become one. Maintain a sweeping panoramic awareness of all time and space. Compared to the massive architecture of the universe, any single object is nothing more than a tiny grape seed, and the entirety of your life is just a half twist of a corkscrew against the backdrop of eternity. Keep firmly in mind that everything you perceive is already beginning to fray at the edges, entering a state of transition and moving inexorably toward fragmentation and rot. Everything was born specifically so it could die. Look closely at how people behave when they are eating, sleeping, or mating. Contrast that with their behavior when they are strutting about in positions of power, barking orders, and puffing themselves up with arrogant pride. Remember the humiliating things they submitted to just yesterday to satisfy their urges, and the degrading things they will submit to tomorrow for the exact same reasons. Every single event that nature assigns to a person is exactly what they need, delivered at the exact moment they need it. The earth deeply longs for the rain, and the sky longs to release it. The entire universe experiences a profound longing to create whatever is destined to come next. I align my will with the world and tell it, I share your longing. You face only a few possibilities in this life. You can continue living as you are, which you should be accustomed to by now. You can choose to end your life, asserting your ultimate freedom, or you can die naturally, knowing you have fully met your obligations. These are the only options, so there is every reason to remain optimistic. Never forget that your immediate surroundings are no different from an empty field. The life you lead here is fundamentally the same as life on a mountain, on the coast, or anywhere else. As Plato observed, the philosopher looks down on the posturing of kings as if they were nothing more than shepherds milking their flocks in the hills. Interrogate the state of your own mind. What are you turning it into? Is it a hollow, empty vessel? Has it become isolated and violently torn away from the community of humanity? Has it melted into your physical flesh, sharing its base urges and acting as a servant to your biology? When a slave flees his master, he is branded a fugitive. The law of nature is our ultimate master. Whenever you give way to grief, anger, or fear, you are desperately trying to escape a decree issued by the ruler of the universe. By rebelling against the fate assigned to you, you brand yourself a fugitive from divine justice. Consider the biological mechanics of life. A man deposits his seed and walks away. Instantly, an invisible force takes over, molding that raw material into a living child. A person swallows food, and a hidden power converts it into sensation, physical strength, and daily consciousness. Train yourself to perceive these silent, miraculous forces at work. Just as clearly as you see the physical forces of gravity and momentum, remind yourself continuously that the present moment is merely a replay of the past. The exact same dramas will unfold in the future. Picture the bustling courts of Hadrian, Antoninus, Philip, Alexander, or Croesus. The play is identical from beginning to end, only the cast of characters changes. When you see someone wallowing in hurt feelings and bitter resentment, picture a pig being dragged to the sacrificial altar, kicking and squealing in terrified agony. The person who lies awake at night, weeping silently over the inescapable chains of fate, is no different. Everything in the universe must submit to destiny. Only rational beings are granted the supreme privilege of submitting voluntarily. Pause your frantic activity and ask yourself, am I truly terrified of death simply because it will prevent me from continuing this specific trivial task? When you are subjected to the bad behavior of others, immediately redirect your focus to your own past. Remember the times you acted similarly, when you mistakenly believed that money, pleasure, or social status were actual goods. By recognizing that the offender is acting under the overwhelming compulsion of their own ignorance, your anger will evaporate. If possible, gently remove the compulsion by educating them. When you look at the people around you, superimpose the faces of the dead upon them. When you see a modern flatterer, picture an ancient sycophant. When you look in the mirror, see the ghosts of the emperors who ruled before you. Then let the profound realization strike you. Where are all of those people now? They are nowhere. They are smoke, dust, and fading legends. Human life is a fleeting vapor. Knowing how quickly everything ceases to exist, why subject yourself to such intense internal turmoil? Just live out your brief span of time honorably. Treat every obstacle and missed opportunity as nothing more than a training ground for your rational mind. Digest your experiences just as a strong stomach digests its food, or as a roaring fire consumes whatever is thrown onto it, transforming the debris into brilliant light and heat. Ensure that no one can ever truthfully claim that you are dishonest or lacking in straightforwardness. If someone holds that opinion, let it be a complete fabrication. The responsibility for your character rests entirely in your own hands. No external force can stop you from being a person of absolute integrity. If you find yourself incapable of living honestly, then resolve to leave life entirely. For living without virtue is a violation of universal reason. Given the raw material of your current circumstances, what is the most rational, healthy thing you can do or say? Whatever it is, do it immediately. Do not pretend that some external barrier is stopping you. You will never find peace until you derive the exact same intense pleasure from acting in accordance with human nature as a hedonist derives from physical indulgence. Doing what you were designed to do should be your highest joy, and it is a joy you can access anywhere. A rolling cylinder cannot determine its own path, and water and fire are easily blocked by physical barriers, but the human intellect possesses the miraculous ability to carve its way through any impediment, either by its innate power or by the sheer force of its will. Keep this vision of unstoppable, flowing logic in your mind. Obstacles may bruise your lifeless flesh, but they cannot touch your mind unless you voluntarily surrender your judgment to them. In the physical world, damage degrades the object. In the moral realm, a human being is actually elevated and improved by the noble way they respond to adversity. Remember that nothing can truly harm a citizen of the universe unless it harms the universal law itself, and no worldly misfortune has the power to damage the divine law. If you have truly absorbed the principles of philosophy, even a passing phrase from a poet is enough to banish your fear and grief. Consider Homer's description of humanity as leaves scattered by the wind. Your children are fragile leaves. The crowds who blindly applaud you or bitterly curse you are nothing but leaves. The fragile reputation you leave behind will be carried by leaves. They bud in the spring, the wind rips them down, and the tree endlessly generates new ones to take their place. You are allotted only a microscopic sliver of time, yet you panic and grasp at things as if they were eternal. Very soon, darkness will claim you, and the people who lower you into the earth will be mourned by others in their turn. A healthy pair of eyes does not demand to see only pale, muted colors. It welcomes whatever light exists. A healthy stomach digests whatever it receives. In the exact same manner, a healthy mind must be fully prepared for any eventuality. a mind that constantly cries out for its children to be safe or demands universal approval, is as weak and diseased as eyes that cannot tolerate the sun. No matter how virtuous a life you lead, there will always be people standing around your deathbed who are secretly relieved to see you go. Even the most intelligent and benevolent person will leave behind someone who thinks, finally, we are free of this suffocating moralist. If this is true for the best of us, think of how many flaws you possess that would make people eager to be rid of you. Reflecting on this will make you far less reluctant to leave this world. You will say to yourself, I am leaving a life where my own companions, the people I labored for and loved, secretly hope my departure will make their lives easier. Why would I ever want to linger here? Yet, you must not depart with bitterness. Remain true to your own character, caring, sympathetic, and remarkably kind. Do not feel as if you are being violently torn away. Just as a peaceful death gently separates the soul from the body, you must gently release yourself from the people around you. Nature tied the knot that bound you to them, and now nature is simply untying it. Step away without resistance, recognizing it as just another necessary function of the natural world. Train yourself to constantly question the motives of the actions you witness, asking, why are they doing that? But you must always begin this relentless interrogation with yourself. Never forget that the sovereign force directing your life is hidden deep within you. It is the true source of your speech, your vitality, and your identity. Do not confuse it with the fleshy vessel that surrounds it or the organs attached to it. They are merely instruments, as lifeless without the guiding mind as a carpenter's axe, a weaver's shuttle, or a driver's whip. Book 11. Define the unique properties of the rational mind. It possesses the profound ability to observe itself, to analyze its own depths, and to shape itself into whatever form it desires. Unlike the farmer who plants a crop for others to reap, or the animal whose labor benefits its master, the rational mind cultivates and gathers its own harvest. It achieves absolute completeness, regardless of when the boundary of its life is reached. In the theater, a performance cut short is an unfinished tragedy. But the rational soul fulfills its purpose perfectly at any given moment, allowing a person to step away saying, my work here is totally complete. Furthermore, this mind spans the cosmos. It peers into the endless void of time, understanding the grand cyclical rhythms of universal destruction and rebirth. It realizes with absolute clarity that no future generation will witness anything fundamentally new. Just as our ancestors saw nothing we do not see today. A person who has reached even a modest maturity has essentially witnessed the entirety of existence, both past and future. The rational soul is uniquely marked by an unwavering love for its neighbors, a dedication to truth, and a profound humility. It recognizes that nothing in the universe is more sacred than its own integrity, aligning perfectly with the universal law of justice. You must cultivate an absolute immunity to the seductive power of sensory delights, whether they be the sweet trills of a melody, the physical grace of a dancer, or the thrilling tension of athletic combat. When a song threatens to overwhelm you, isolate it into its individual notes. Ask yourself, of each isolated sound, is this tiny vibration so powerful that it can conquer my reason? You will be profoundly ashamed to answer yes. Apply the same analytical rigor to a dancer's routine, freezing each individual movement and posture in your mind until it loses its hypnotic flow. Subject all the mesmerizing spectacles of life to this ruthless deconstruction. Break everything down into its constituent, uninspiring parts, reserving your awe exclusively for moral virtue and the actions that naturally flow from it. Apply this dissecting vision to the entirety of your life. Consider the profound beauty of a soul that is fully prepared to be severed from its physical shell at any given instant. Whether this separation leads to total extinction, a scattering into the wind, or a passage into another state of being, the prepared mind faces it with steady resolve. However, this readiness must never be a dramatic theatrical performance born of sheer obstinacy or a desperate desire for martyrdom. It must be a deeply reasoned, quiet, and dignified conclusion, completely free of hysteria, capable of persuading others through its calm rationality. If I have contributed to the well-being of my community, I have inherently benefited myself. Let this simple truth remain constantly in the forefront of your consciousness, and never abandon your commitment to it. When asked what your chosen profession is, the only acceptable answer is goodness. And how else can this goodness be achieved except by intensely studying the architecture of the cosmos and the fundamental nature of humanity? Reflect on the historical progression of the theatrical arts. Tragedy was initially brought to the stage to remind audiences of the inescapable realities of fate. It teaches us that the events that unfold in life are inevitable, and that the suffering which moves us to tears in the amphitheater should not drive us to bitter rage when it occurs on the stage of our own lives. We watch the great mythical heroes wail in agony, recognizing that human endurance is the only ultimate response, finding comfort in the poetic reminders that if the gods allow our suffering, they must have their reasons. The ancient comic writers, on the other hand, served a different yet vital purpose. They employed brutal, unfiltered frankness to shatter the swollen egos of the elite, utilizing a blunt, instructive speech designed to expose pretension. Contrast this with the later eras of comedy, which slowly devolved into a hollow display of technical skill and superficial realism, losing all moral gravity and leaving us to wonder what possible point the scripts and staging serve. It should be glaringly obvious that there is absolutely no environment, no court, and no social position more perfectly suited to the daily, rigorous practice of philosophy than the very one you occupy at this exact moment. A branch that is chopped away from its neighboring branch is simultaneously severed from the life-giving trunk of the entire tree. In the exact same way, a human being who violently isolates himself from a single fellow citizen effectively amputates himself from the entire body of humanity. While a branch is severed by the physical blade of a gardener, a human being cuts himself off through the slow poison of hatred and aversion, completely failing to realize that he has exiled himself from the civic whole. Yet, the divine architect of our community has granted us a miraculous dispensation. We possess the unique ability to graft ourselves back onto the trunk, to heal the rift, and to resume our vital role in the living organism. However, if this cycle of severing and regrafting is constantly repeated, the tissue becomes scarred, and the isolated part struggles to ever truly integrate again. A branch that has grown seamlessly with the tree from the beginning is fundamentally different from one that has been hacked off and violently strapped back into place. They may share the same wood, but as the gardeners say, they no longer share the same unbroken spirit. As you advance along the path of rational virtue, you will inevitably encounter individuals who actively attempt to block your progress. Just as they possess no power to stop you from performing a sound, healthy action, you must never allow them to destroy your tolerance for them. You must maintain a dual vigilance. First, to keep your own judgments clear and your actions steady, and second, to maintain an unshakable gentleness toward those who try to thwart you. Exploding in anger at their ignorance is just as cowardly as surrendering your principles and fleeing the battlefield. Both are acts of profound desertion. The one who retreats from the fight and the one who alienates himself from his natural human kin are equally guilty of abandoning their posts. The raw power of nature can never be subordinate to human artifice, for all human art is merely a pale imitation of the natural world. Therefore, the supreme, all-encompassing intelligence of nature must infinitely surpass the highest achievements of any mortal craftsman. Every art form utilizes lesser materials to serve higher, more complex goals. Nature follows this exact same hierarchical logic, and from this fundamental natural order, the concept of justice is born. Justice is the foundational soil from which all other virtues grow. It is impossible to act justly if we allow ourselves to be captivated by trivialities, or if we remain gullible, unstable, and easily swayed by the shifting winds of circumstance. The external objects that so desperately agitate your mind, the things you frantically chase after, and the things you terrifiedly run from, are not actually moving toward you. It is you who are relentlessly hunting them. If you simply suspend your feverish judgments regarding their value, they will remain completely motionless, and your frantic cycle of pursuit and evasion will instantly cease, leaving you in perfect peace. The soul is naturally a perfect, luminous sphere in pure equilibrium. It maintains this divine shape as long as it refuses to stretch itself thin in desperate grasping for external things, and equally refuses to collapse inward in bitter, contracted despair. It must not fragment outward or sink back upon itself, but rather remain a brilliant orb of light, illuminating the fundamental truths of the universe and the quiet truths residing within its own borders. If another man holds me in contempt, that is entirely his burden to carry. My only responsibility is to ensure that my own actions and words are never worthy of contempt. If another man harbors deep hatred for me, that is his sickness. My duty is to remain eternally patient, cheerful, and benevolent toward everyone, including him, always ready to gently illuminate his errors without a trace of malice. I must not do this to publicly flaunt my own superior self-control or with biting irony, but out of a deep, authentic decency. That is what a true philosopher must be like inside, never letting the gods catch a glimpse of anger or resentment festering in his heart. What possible harm can befall you if you are executing the precise duties your nature demands, serving the greater good of the cosmic tapestry with every tool at your disposal? Consider the absurd theater of human ambition. Men secretly despise one another, yet their desperate desire to dominate and rule each other drives them to bow, scrape, and flatter in a pathetic display of mutual sycophancy. There is nothing more sickening than the artificial sincerity of a man who loudly proclaims, "I am going to level with you." Such an announcement is inherently dishonest. True frankness does not require a preamble. It should be instantly legible in your eyes and written clearly across your forehead. An honest person's intentions should shine from their face with the same unmistakable clarity that a lover sees in the gaze of their beloved. A genuinely straightforward person is like someone carrying a very strong scent. Anyone who draws near them detects it immediately. But calculated, performative frankness is a hidden dagger. The false friendship of the wolf is the most dangerous trap of all, and must be avoided at all costs. True goodness, simplicity, and kindness are never hidden. They radiate effortlessly from the whole being. The power to live a beautiful, unblemished life resides entirely within your own soul, provided you can master the art of utter indifference to things that possess no inherent moral value. This mastery is achieved by examining every object and event microscopically and macroscopically. Remember that these external things do not project their own meanings onto us. They stand outside our doors, silent and neutral. It is the human mind that acts as the author of its own distress, frantically generating judgments and inscribing them upon its own walls. Remember that you do not have to write these things down. You can choose to leave the page blank, and if a false impression manages to sneak in, you possess the power to erase it instantly. This intense vigilance is required for only a very short time, and then our lives will be over. Why make it so agonizing when things go against you? If a circumstance is ordained by nature, embrace it joyfully and cease your resistance. If it is not, determine what your own rational nature requires and relentlessly pursue it, even if it brings you no public glory. No one can ever be faulted for pursuing their own authentic well-being. Continuously analyze the origins of all things, the raw materials they are built from, the transformations they are destined to undergo, and the eventual forms they will take. Understand that this endless cycle of change brings absolutely no harm to the universe. When dealing with the inevitable friction of human relationships, bind these 9 principles to your soul as if they were gifts from the muses. First, remember our profound interconnection. We were brought into existence to serve and protect one another, just as the ram guards the flock. Second, look past their public masks. Examine what they are like in their private chambers, at their dining tables, and in their beds, and see how desperately they are enslaved by their own flawed convictions. Third, recognize that if their actions are genuinely right, you have no grounds for complaint. And if their actions are wrong, they are acting blindly, driven by an involuntary ignorance that robs them of the truth. Fourth, humbly remind yourself of your own vast catalogue of flaws. Even if you have avoided certain specific errors out of cowardice or fear of public opinion, the dark potential for them still lurks within your breast. Fifth, realize that you often lack the necessary context to even judge whether an action is truly a mistake. Human behavior is endlessly complex, and sweeping condemnations are usually born of ignorance. Sixth, when the fires of irritation threaten to consume you, recall the staggering brevity of human life. In the blink of a cosmic eye, both you and the one who offends you will be laid out in the silent earth. Seventh, understand that your agony is never caused by their actions, which remain safely locked within their own minds, but entirely by your own interpretation of those actions. Simply refuse to label the event a catastrophe, and your anger will vanish into thin air. Eighth, recognize that the toxic cocktail of rage and sorrow you brew in response to an insult causes you exponentially more psychological damage than the actual offense ever could. Ninth, remember that genuine, unfeigned kindness is an absolutely invincible weapon. The most vicious adversary is ultimately powerless against a person who responds with consistent, gentle affection, calmly pointing out the error of their ways at the exact moment they attempt to strike. This correction must never be delivered with a sneer or a sense of moral superiority, but with the quiet, earnest logic of a brother. And to these 9, add a 10th, a truth from Apollo. To demand that flawed, ignorant people cease behaving poorly is an act of sheer madness, for it is demanding the impossible. But to allow them to terrorize others while haughtily expecting them to exempt you from their cruelty is the height of arrogant tyranny. You must maintain a ruthless patrol over your own consciousness, instantly destroying 4 specific types of thought the moment they arise. You must say to yourself, this thought is completely unnecessary. Or, this thought actively erodes the bonds of my community. Or, this thought does not reflect my genuine, authentic belief. For to speak what you do not truly believe is the definition of absurdity. And the 4th condition to watch for is the horrifying realization that the divine, rational spark within your mind has surrendered its throne, bowing in defeat to the pathetic, groveling urges of your physical flesh. The ethereal fire and the living breath within your physical body are naturally driven to rise upward, yet they humbly submit to the overarching design of the cosmos, remaining bound within your earthly form. Conversely, the heavy elements of earth and water that make up your flesh are naturally driven to sink, yet they are forced to rise and take up a position that is not fundamentally their own. Even the blind, unthinking elements obey the universal decree, remaining dutifully at their assigned posts until the final signal to abandon them is given. How tragic, then, that your conscious intellect is the only component that whines and rebels against its station. It is subjected to no violent compulsion, only to the gentle dictates of its own nature. Yet it constantly defects, setting off in the opposite direction every time the mind is drawn towards self-indulgence, toward paralyzing fear, or toward irrational anger. It is a cowardly soldier deserting the front lines. It was created to show reverence and respect for the divine, just as much as it was designed for justice. To fail in this reverence is to shatter the foundation of all civic harmony. A life cannot follow a straight, unbroken trajectory if it lacks a single, consistent goal. It is not enough to simply desire good things, because the chaotic desires of the masses are scattered across 1,000 conflicting trivialities. The only valid target is a common, civic good, when you direct all of your energies toward that singular purpose. Your actions become seamlessly consistent, and your character becomes whole. Remember the old fable of the town mouse and the country mouse, and picture the pathetic, trembling anxiety of the worldly creature who is terrified of his own shadow. Recall how Socrates dismissed the terrified superstitions of the masses as nothing more than monsters under the bed, cheap masks designed for the sole purpose of frightening small children. Observe the quiet confidence of the Spartans at their festivals. They graciously offered the comfortable, shaded seats to their foreign guests, yet were entirely content to sit anywhere themselves, completely untroubled by social status. Think of Socrates politely refusing the summons of the Macedonian king, explicitly stating that he would not subject himself to the living death of accepting lavish favors he could never hope to repay, preserving his total independence. The ancient philosophers wisely advised us to keep the memory of a highly virtuous historical figure continuously playing in our minds, serving as a constant, silent standard for our own behavior. The Pythagoreans instructed their students to gaze up at the stars before the break of dawn. They did this to remind the human soul of the celestial body's flawless, unbroken execution of their ancient tasks, and to inspire a profound love for their naked, unadorned purity. A star wears no concealment. Remember the absolute lack of embarrassment Socrates displayed when his wife took his cloak and he was forced to wrap himself in a simple towel, and the profound, piercing lecture he delivered to his mortified friends who tried to flee from the sight of his poverty. Just as you cannot hope to master the intricacies of reading and writing until you have humbly submitted to a teacher, you cannot hope to master the far more complex art of living without profound, disciplined study. You cannot speak with the true authority of a free person if your mind remains enslaved to its desires. Do not expect the impossible from nature. Do not demand to pluck fresh figs in the dead of winter, and do not cling desperately to the illusion that you can keep your children from the natural grasp of old age and death. The great philosopher Epictetus warned that when you lean down to kiss your beloved child good night, you should whisper quietly in your own heart, "Tomorrow you may be dead." To the superstitious, this sounds like a horrific curse tempting fate, but it is nothing more than the calm acknowledgement of a biological reality, as mundane and inevitable as observing the harvesting of ripe grain. Consider the life cycle of a grape. First it is a hard, sour bud, then it swells with sweet juices, and finally it shrivels into a dried raisin. It is a continuous, unbroken chain of physical transitions. At no point is the grape destroyed. It is simply transformed from what it is into what it is not yet. Remember that no thief in the universe possesses the power to steal your free will. You must exhaustively master the art of psychological acquiescence, putting a heavy, conscious guard around your impulses to ensure they never stray from the path of social utility and inherent dignity. You must utterly eradicate the blind pursuit of desires and entirely cease trying to avoid the events that nature has placed beyond your control. This is not a trivial debate over abstract theory. It is a desperate, fundamental fight for the survival of your own sanity. Socrates would ask his squabbling students if they pretty fur Oberon to possess the minds of rational men or the minds of irrational beasts. When they chose rationality, he would ask if they wanted minds that were diseased or vibrantly healthy. And when they inevitably chose health, he would demand to know why they were not working relentlessly to achieve it, and why they wasted their precious, fleeting hours in endless, bitter conflict. Book 12. Everything you desire to achieve through a long, circuitous journey can be yours this very moment, if only you stop denying yourself the opportunity. You must release your grip on the past, trust the future entirely to the hands of Providence, and direct your present moment strictly toward reverence and justice. Reverence allows you to embrace the fate you have been allotted, for nature designed it specifically for you and you for it. Justice empowers you to speak the truth with absolute frankness and to act exactly as you should, treating others as they truly deserve. You must not let the misbehavior of others, your own false perceptions, the idle chatter of society, or the physical sensations of your bodily shell deter you from this path. If, as your final hour approaches, you cast aside all superficial distractions and cling only to your sovereign mind and the divine spark within, if you learn to fear not the end of life, but rather the failure to ever live properly, you will finally become a person worthy of the universe that created you. You will cease to be a startled alien in your own homeland, forever shocked by the ordinary events of daily existence, as if they were unheard of tragedies, and you will no longer be at the mercy of shifting circumstances. The divine intelligence observes all human souls stripped completely bare of their fleshy containers, their bark, and their worldly grime. God's intellect connects directly and exclusively with that which was poured out from his own essence into ours. By cultivating this exact same piercing vision, you can eliminate a vast amount of unnecessary distress. Once you learn to look straight through the physical flesh that covers you, it becomes impossible to be seduced or unsettled by the glittering illusions of clothing, grand houses, celebrity, or the theatrical costumes of human society. You are constructed from three basic components: body, breath, and mind. The first two are merely loaned to you in trust. Only the third is truly your own and under your clear title. If you can successfully isolate your mind from the chaotic swirl of what others say and do, from the burdens of your own past actions, from the anxiety of the future, and from the biological impositions of your body and breath, you will be free. By cutting yourself loose from the rushing vortex of external events, your mind can achieve perfect clarity, living entirely on its own terms, doing what is right, accepting what happens, and speaking the truth. By shedding the heavy layers of past and future and becoming a perfectly still, luminous sphere, you can spend whatever time remains to you in profound tranquility, boundless kindness, and total harmony with the divine spirit seated within. It is a profound and tragic irony that while we all instinctively love ourselves far more than we love anyone else, we consistently value the opinions of others above our own. If a god, or even a supremely wise human, were to suddenly command us to immediately broadcast every single thought and imagination out loud, we would not survive the humiliation for a single day. This reveals the staggering, absurd degree to which we submit to the judgment of our neighbors, rather than honoring our own inner compass. One might wonder how the gods, who have orchestrated the cosmos with such flawless skill and benevolent care, could have allowed the most virtuous human beings, those who lived in intimate partnership with the divine, to simply cease to exist upon death, vanishing utterly into the void. If this is indeed the reality of death, you must trust with absolute certainty that if it were right or natural for things to be otherwise, the gods would have arranged it so. The very fact that they did not choose to make us immortal proves that it is ultimately inappropriate for us to be so. To argue otherwise is to challenge the fundamental fairness of the divine. If the gods are perfectly just and flawlessly fair, they could not have carelessly blundered or committed an injustice when constructing the architecture of the world. You must actively practice even the tasks that seem entirely beyond your capabilities. Consider how the left hand, which is weak and useless at almost everything due to a lack of training, can nevertheless grip the reins of a horse far more powerfully than the right, simply because it has been practiced in that specific art. Reflect deeply on the fragile condition of your body and soul at the moment death arrives. Contemplate the agonizing brevity of a human lifespan, the staggering vastness of the eternities that stretch before and after it, and the delicate, decaying nature of all physical matter. Train yourself to see the raw, naked causes of things, stripping away their deceptive surfaces. Examine the true nature of pain, pleasure, death, and fame. Recognize that we are the sole architects of our own internal restlessness, that no external force can truly obstruct the sovereign mind, and that the quality of our existence is dictated entirely by our own perceptions. The student of philosophy must behave like a boxer, not a fencer. A fencer relies on a weapon that must be picked up and put down, and which can be easily dropped or lost. But a boxer's weapon is a permanent part of his own body. To defend himself, he needs only to clench his fist and strike. You must relentlessly analyze every object and event, breaking it down to its absolute essence, examining its substance, its fundamental cause, and its ultimate purpose in the universe. It is your supreme privilege to claim the freedom to do only what the divine will demands, and to cheerfully accept whatever the divine will delivers. It is completely irrational to blame the gods for the misfortunes of life, for they commit no wrongs, whether by design or by accident. It is equally pointless to blame human beings, for their wrongs are committed blindly and involuntarily. Ultimately, there is absolutely no one to blame. The man who stands, shocked and outraged by the normal, everyday events of the world, is as foolish as a traveler who gapes in astonishment at the customs of a foreign land. The universe is governed either by a rigorous, inescapable necessity, a benevolent providence, or a chaotic, random storm of atoms. If reality is an unyielding necessity, it is madness to violently resist it. If it is a benevolent providence, you must focus entirely on making yourself worthy of divine assistance. And if existence is nothing but a turbulent, undirected sea of chaos, you should feel profound gratitude that amidst the raging waters you possess a rational mind capable of steering your vessel. Even if the violent storms of life eventually sweep away your physical flesh and breath, they can never sweep away the impregnable fortress of your guiding intellect. It is a tragic absurdity that an ordinary oil lamp will continue to burn brightly, shedding its light relentlessly until it is physically put out. Yet the brilliant virtues of truth, justice, and self-control within a human being so often flicker and die long before the body perishes. When someone appears to have wronged you, pause and demand proof, asking yourself how you can be absolutely sure a wrong was committed. Even if the injury is undeniable, you must remember that the wrongdoer has already been fiercely tried and convicted by the highest court, his own degraded character. To damage one's own soul through malice is as grotesque as violently scratching out one's own eyes. Furthermore, it is incredibly naive to expect a vicious person to behave without causing harm. You might as well demand that a fig tree not produce juice, or that a crying infant remain perfectly silent. A person gripped by a corrupted character operates under a dark compulsion. They simply cannot help but act exactly as they do. If their behavior still incites your anger, then it is your own mind that requires immediate, rigorous discipline. The rules of a well-lived life are stark and uncompromising. If an action is not inherently right, you must refuse to do it. If a statement is not absolutely true, you must refuse to say it. Your intentions must remain crystalline and pure, always piercing through the deceptive appearances of the world. Dissect every experience to find its cause, its material makeup, its purpose, and the precise, limited duration it is fated to exist. You must awaken to the realization that you harbor a force far more majestic and powerful than the base passions that violently jerk you around like a wooden marionette. Interrogate your own consciousness at every moment, asking yourself if your current thoughts are polluted by fear, jealousy, or untamed desire. Never allow your actions to be random or devoid of a deliberate guiding purpose. Moreover, ensure that this central purpose is entirely dedicated to the common good of your fellow human beings. Keep the ultimate reality constantly before your eyes. In a remarkably short time, you will dissolve into nothingness and be nowhere. The exact same fate awaits every single person currently drawing breath, and every physical object in your field of vision. The destiny of all created things is to change, to undergo profound transformation, and ultimately to perish, making way for the continuous birth of the new. Your entire experience of the world is dictated by your own perceptions, and those perceptions are entirely within your sovereign control. The moment you choose to discard your false judgments and imagined grievances, you will sail around the treacherous headland and drop anchor in a haven of perfect serenity and total calm. Any specific action that ceases at its naturally appointed time suffers absolutely no harm or disgrace simply because it has stopped. The person performing the action is not degraded by its conclusion. By this exact same logic, the massive, overarching sequence of actions that constitutes a human life is not diminished, ruined, or made evil when it reaches its natural stopping point. The individual who arrives at the end of their allotted time has no legitimate grounds for complaint. The boundaries of this lifespan are meticulously calculated and set by nature, either by the internal clock of your own biology or by the grand sweeping mechanics of the universal design. The continuous shifting and dissolution of individual parts is precisely what keeps the whole world eternally young and perfectly on schedule. Therefore, the cessation of your life is fundamentally a good thing. It is a necessary event orchestrated by the cosmos, actively promoting the health of the universe, just as it is promoted by it. To accept this final transition willingly is to walk the path of the divine, perfectly aligning your own rationality with the goals of reason. There are three vital principles that must govern your existence. First, ensure that your own actions are never arbitrary, but always perfectly aligned with the pure dictates of abstract justice. When dealing with external events, remember that they are the result of either random chance or divine providence. It is foolish to complain about chance and impossible to argue with providence. Second, observe the entire life cycle of every created thing, tracking its journey from a microscopic seed to its quickening breath, and finally to its inevitable relinquishment of life. Analyze where the raw materials originated and to what cosmic reserves they will ultimately return. Third, imagine yourself suddenly elevated to a staggering height, gazing down upon the vast, chaotic theater of human life. You would instantly recognize the profound pointlessness of our frantic struggles, especially when viewing it against the backdrop of the boundless skies. Even if you observed this spectacle for eternity, you would see nothing but the exact same repetitive patterns, the identical life forms playing out their brief dramas over and over again. Knowing this, there is absolutely no justification for human arrogance. Your salvation lies in discarding your misperceptions. No external force can ever prevent you from throwing them out. Whenever you feel the heat of anger rising, you have forgotten that everything unfolding is entirely natural, and that the moral responsibility for any offensive act belongs solely to the perpetrator. You have forgotten that the events distressing you have occurred continuously since the dawn of time and are occurring simultaneously all over the earth right now. You have lost sight of the profound kinship that binds all humanity together, a connection not of blood or genetics, but of a shared divine intellect. You must remember that your individual mind is a direct fragment of God, that absolutely nothing belongs to you, not your children, your body, or your very life, because every single thing is a temporary loan from that ultimate source. Always remember that reality is shaped entirely by how you choose to see it, and that the razor-thin present moment is the absolute only thing you can ever possess or lose. Whenever you feel overwhelmed by resentment, call to mind the long list of historical figures who were consumed by intense anger, burning hatred, or dramatic misfortune. Where is all their sound and fury now? It is nothing but smoke, dust, and fading legend. Recall the obsessions, the arrogance, and the desperate passions of the powerful, and see how incredibly trivial the objects of their desires truly were. It is infinitely more philosophical to humbly take exactly what you are given, maintaining your self-control and quietly obeying the divine will without ever making a self-righteous spectacle of your own endurance. For there is nothing on earth more insufferable than a person who loudly boasts of their own profound humility. When skeptics demand to know how you can be so certain of the gods' existence when you have never physically seen them, you must answer with two undeniable truths. First, the miraculous design of the world is visible everywhere around us, testifying to a supreme architect. Second, you have never physically seen your own soul, yet you revere its power completely. In the exact same way, through the continuous, unmistakable experience of their power in your life, you know the gods exist and you bow in reverence to them. True salvation is found in the relentless pursuit of seeing every single thing precisely for what it is, understanding its fundamental nature and its ultimate purpose. It demands that you do only what is undeniably right and speak only the absolute truth without a shred of hesitation. To live this way is to experience the profound joy of a fully realized life, stringing together moments of unbroken goodness like an endless, flawless chain. The universe is defined by singularity. Despite the illusions of plurality, the light of the sun is a single, unified entity, even though it is broken up and scattered by walls, mountains, and 1,000 other obstacles. The physical substance of the world is one, even though it is fragmented into a multitude of temporary shapes. The life force is one, though distributed among a vast array of unique creatures with their individual limitations. And the divine intelligence is one, even when it appears completely divided among individual human minds. While the physical elements of the cosmos lack conscious awareness of their profound connection, they are nonetheless held together by the gravitational pull of unity. But the rational intelligence is uniquely blessed. It is naturally drawn toward other rational minds, seeking to join with them in a state of beautiful, shared awareness. Ask yourself what you truly desire from this existence. Is it simply the mechanical ability to keep breathing, to feel raw sensations, to be yanked around by desires, to biologically grow and decay, or to use your voice and think? Do any of these rudimentary functions genuinely seem worth clinging to? If you recognize that you can easily surrender all of these trivialities, then your only remaining goal is to steadily follow the path of reason and the will of God to the very end. To elevate these base biological functions to the status of ultimate goods, and to grieve because the arrival of death will inevitably strip them away from you, is a profound obstacle to your spiritual freedom. Consider the microscopic fraction of infinite time you have been allotted, a tiny spark that is instantly swallowed by the yawning abyss of eternity. Consider the infinitesimal fraction of the world's substance and spirit that you currently occupy, and the minuscule patch of earth upon which you crawl. Keep this staggering scale constantly in mind, and you will realize that nothing truly matters except executing the duties your nature demands and gracefully accepting whatever fate nature sends you. Everything depends entirely upon the internal conduct of your own mind. All external things, whether seemingly within your physical control or far beyond it, are ultimately as meaningless and lifeless as corpses and smoke. To fully conquer the fear of death, simply remind yourself that even the most debased hedonists, people who define morality entirely by the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain, have routinely managed to face their end without terror. If an unprincipled pleasure seeker can look death in the eye, a philosopher certainly can, if you train yourself to see that true goodness is found only in the ripeness of a timely, rational action. If you realize that an infinite sequence of virtuous actions holds no more inherent value than a few. And if you understand that gazing at the theatre of the world for a century is no different than observing it for a decade, then the prospect of death will lose all its power to frighten you. You have lived your life as a citizen in the grandest of all cities, the universal cosmos. Whether you were granted 5 years or 100 makes absolutely no difference, for the laws of this great city apply equally to all, without distinction. Why, then, should it be a terrifying tragedy to be sent away from this city? You are not being exiled by a vicious tyrant or a corrupt judge, but gently dismissed by the exact same nature that originally invited you in. You are like an actor on a stage, protesting to the impresario that you have only finished 3 acts of the play, not the full 5. The master of the production responds, "Yes, but in this specific drama, the 3 acts constitute the entire play." The length of the performance was fixed by the divine power that directed your creation, and that same power now orchestrates your dissolution. Neither your arrival nor your departure was ever yours to determine. Therefore make your final exit with absolute grace, reciprocating the exact same gentle grace that the universe has shown to you.